Good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome everyone to the Monday, August 24th Fayetteville City Council meeting. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll ask that all would rise for the invocation. If you could please remain standing and repeat in unison with us the Pledge of Allegiance immediately following. Because of COVID, we have limited access by our normal group of ministers, but we have several on the panel, so we'll ask either one of the members of council or one of the ministers if they would lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we come to you simply to say thank you. Thank you for the council. Thank you for our mayor. Thank you for our city staff. Thank you, God, for the great citizens of this city. God bless this meeting, oh God, that we might have a conversation and dialogue, that we might reach conclusions that might impact the city for the better future of our great citizens and the city of Fayetteville, North Carolina. Bless us all, keep us safe through this COVID pandemic and all the other things that are challenging the future of our city, that we might see great success. Keep us in your precious name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, Bishop, Councilman Wright, for that invocation. At this time, we will move right into our announcements. I'd like to welcome everyone. We have a special group from our PD, which I think we'll hear from a little later in the council meeting, that may can introduce some of the special guests that we have here. But at this time, we'll go to Mr. Scott Bullard, Emergency Management Coordinator, to provide us an update on COVID-19. Mr. Bullard, how are you, sir?
Good, sir. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council, and everyone within the sound of my voice on this 24th day of August. The time seems to drag on. We're 162 days into our state of emergency for COVID. I'll step that to the side a moment just to make a remark that our neighbors in the Gulf have two tropical storms that will probably be depressions or greater when they hit. And the unfortunate thing for their circumstances is the storms did not follow the rules. They're not following the alphabet. They're out of order. And you're going to have something that I don't think has happened in history, with a ladder named storm going ashore first. But we're thankful, and the state is posturing to help neighbors in due process and as appropriate. As I said, this is the 162nd day of our state of emergency, day 94 of being in the phase 2 safer at home practice, and we're hopeful that there are 18 more days of that process left to go if things stay as they're patterned at the moment. 156,396 cases statewide. Cumberland County has 3,745 of that number. Unfortunately, of the 2,535 fatalities, 65 of those have occurred here in our county. A bright point is 136,630 have recovered from COVID, which we're very glad for that. And at this hour, based on the lagging numbers, 948 hospitalized, which is not all of the hospitals reporting, but let's just say around 1,000. You hear constantly from Dr. Green and others that we want to see that 9% positive rate drop towards 5. That's the goal. We're still hopeful that's going to happen. I think the state got down to about 5.9 a couple weeks ago. As of today, they're at 7.3. So that's just a goal that we're going to continue to pursue. And we do that simply by what we have talked about, our social distancing, wearing our mask, washing our hands, and so forth. And everybody within the sound of my voice, I applaud you for being enduring with the task and being patient and continuing to do that, because it's really important. Council, there are really three things right now on our radar that we're watching, and I invite you to join me with watching. I said here before, and I'll repeat it. We're a week now into what is something of a social experience with schools going back into session. What that does for us here locally and within my shop, with great detail and specificity, is we're watching because we're comparing plans as to what reopening our operations would look like under the test conditions that the school system offers. With that being said, you've seen 4 of the major universities in the UNC system now start to roll back, almost like they did in March. Don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know, because of the lagging indicators and the numbers that follow this process, what that's going to actually pay off, whether it's going to contain things. But what I do know is as we approach October, which is our traditional cold and flu season, we always see when people get together a few weeks later, numbers increase. So that's something we want to be mindful of. That's something we're very careful in watching that process. And you all get messages, people that stay in tune with our special events, they know many things have been canceled all the way up until right now. The Christmas parade, I believe, is on the table, trying to determine whether it's going to make it or not. What I would direct your attention to, the big mass gathering that's forthcoming is November 3rd. And we've been doing some planning with our county partners on what the social distancing for the polling sites will actually look like. There have always been lines of sorts, but those lines get longer because we have to social distance those lines. So we hope for good weather, and we hope for all those factors where we can continue the practices and make that a successful gathering as well. Subject to any questions you have, I'll be glad to address them if I can.
Thank you, Mr. Bullard. I do have one question. The positive rate here, did you say it was 9?
Yes, sir. It's still 9% for the county.
Okay.
And I caution that's over the course of more than 7 to 14 day window. So.
And the state goal is 5, but their average is 7.
Yes, sir. Okay. 7.3 is what it was this morning.
7.3.
World Health Organization is the one driving that. They want to see 5% or less. They've been celebrating New York State for weeks now, being in the 1% range. It's something we'll get to. It's just going to take a little bit more time.
So, and I'm sure that this is a hypothetical, you may or may not know. What is our rate of testing compared to other places in our state? So in other words, if you test 1,000 people at a 9% rate, that's about 9 people positive, right? And so are we testing here at the same levels that you have random tests where everyone who wants to take a test, whether you're showing symptoms or not, or do we wait until they're symptomatic to test, or do you know?
I don't know the precise answer to that, but what I would offer, and I'm just stealing Dr. Green's usual response to that general question, is we just need to test more. Yeah. And she's been an advocate of that, and the resources, I think, have been well matched. The problem sometimes is getting the test to the people where it's needed most.
Gotcha. Thank you. Councilwoman Ingram?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bullard, correct? And the last point you just mentioned too, about getting the tests to the people who need them the most. And I just want to kind of put out that there are free testing sites, drive-through testing sites. FSU just announced some new dates, August 28th, September 4th, September 11th, September 18th, and September 25th. And so you don't have to get out of your car. So you don't have to get out of your car, but we are, this city and county is making efforts to make sure, and state is making sure that we can get the tests to communities that need them the most. So thank you for saying that.
Thank you, ma'am. Council, any other questions? And we also like to mention to you that we are joined by Zoom by Council members Waddell and Davis. Audio and video, everything good, guys? Okay, all right. Any other, Councilmember Wright?
I have a question. A few months ago, they mentioned about the percentage of African Americans or brown-skinned people that were more susceptible to the coronavirus. Is there a percentage of African Americans that have have received it or have caught the disease, or what do you think? Is there a number for African Americans?
I personally have not seen a number. That's kind of a Dr. Green Health Department question. But even with that being said, I think using the term underrepresented groups across the board, and that's been a focus of the recent testing, back to Councilwoman Ingram's point with pop-up testing and almost maybe the right phrase for that is targeted testing of those groups where you know people need representation and need to be reached out to.
Yeah, they did put a number out, and it was 86% of all people that came up positive were black and brown skinned people. So I was concerned, had that number gone down or had that number come up? So,
well, there have been some changes in the data recently, the way it's reported, and there have been some maybe miscues and fumbles along the way with the way stuff's aggregated and then it's depicted later, because a lot of this data is kind of lagging days to weeks behind when it's finally compiled. But I suspect there's some demographic information,
sure.
And that's something we might well ask of Dr. Green to compile for us.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bullitt, I don't see any other questions, but we thank you for, as always, for the update. We will probably at some point send an invitation out to Dr. Green to maybe give us an update for some of the more technical health-related questions, but we certainly appreciate your assistance.
Absolutely.
All your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Council.
Great job.
All right, Council, moving on to the next item, we have Councilmember Davis, who has an announcement for us. Councilman Davis.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'd like to introduce tonight Miss Diana Juergens. She's the CEO at Rick and Rema Foundation. The Rick and Rema Foundation is a great facility in our district. It actually borders our district 6 and 7 with Councilmember Bishop Wright. It's a location about 50 acres that has been built and created to foster and build relationships between the military community and all of the citizens in Fayetteville. Specifically, it helps to build those relationships and support families, both of military families as well as families in the community. As recent as 2 or 3 weeks ago, we did a partnership drive with them to give away book bags at a drive-through book bag event. They've also hosted National Night Out for police officers and a number of other events. And Ms. Juergens is supposed to use her time tonight to speak to the rest of council in the city to introduce the organization. I've been working with this organization for 2 or 3 years now, and they're great. And I look forward to the continued work that the city and the Rick and Rema Foundation can continue to do and work together on. Ms. Juergens?
Yes, Councilman Davis, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. And Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for this opportunity to share tonight. Again, my name is Diana Juergens. I'm the Executive Director for the Rick Herma Foundation. Super passionate about what we do out there because our goal, our mission to strengthen military families and connect them through fun, quality activities on our 50-acre property. And so tonight, this opportunity is very special to me. I just want to share a few of my objectives coming on as the executive director. I've been in the position 5 months, but I'm a former soldier, married my soldier, supported him for 30 years. And now I have active duty children, 3 of which served right here at Fort Bragg and now have dispersed to different locations in our nation. And so my goal is to build relationship within our All-American city. Again, I was there at the end of the Force of Life back to school event that Councilman Davis hosted at our property. And I am wanting our space to support the community with other events like this. I see it as a partnership. My second thing, to build awareness, in our city and outside, but having been a military spouse, moved 13 times, we always think, okay, where's the next place I want to live? And we try to sway that decision with our soldier. But Rick's Place can help put Fayetteville on the map of a favorite place to go because of what we do out there, as well as what you do within the city in support of those that serve in our military. And that's one of my goals, that our families will want to come to Fayetteville. And then Rick's Place mission to build community. one of the things that I have found is we have over 85% of our volunteers are retirees who've chosen Fayetteville, the all-American city, to be their place, their home, after having moved so many years. And I feel like Rick's Place is a part of that. It's a place they connect. They come out of active duty, but they step into something with us that helps them still be a part of the military community and making a positive difference. And they do. We couldn't do it without our volunteers, really, truly our greatest asset. And finally, I would like to invite you, the city officials, Mr. Mayor, yourself, and key leaders out to the property for a tour. Of course, COVID-19 has kind of slowed us down this year, but our property still is open from sunup to sundown, and we still have military families come out in their ones and twos, come out for breakfast together before mom or dad heads off to work on Fort Bragg. We actually, lunchtime, we have military moms come out in their small groups of just them and their children, or a couple and their children, because of our numbers right now. But I feel like we're still meeting our mission one family at a time. We're giving them a place of refuge. We're set in the heart of Erin Lakes. So we're right in the middle of our city, which makes it super easy. The access to us is super easy. So again, I hope to invite you for a tour, as well as hoping to break out of this phase 2 into phase 3, and us being able to host our barn bash in November. And if that happens, I would like to extend an invitation, and hoping to do our ribbon cutting finally for our new parking lot and on our property. So please check us out. You can go to rhfnow.org, or you can email me if you would like a tour at diana@rhfnow.org as well. So I thank you so much for the opportunity to share about what we're doing out there. And again, please, we want to build relationship within our city. We see this as a partnership to support our military warriors and their families. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Juergens, and appreciate the great work that you and the foundation provide for the soldiers and their families here in the city. I did have a question from Councilwoman Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you,
All right.
Mayor. Oh, good afternoon, Ms. Juergens? Did I pronounce
Yes,
it right?
Juergens.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to just commend you guys for what you're doing. I've had the opportunity to visit the location last year. It's a
Oh, awesome.
yes, very beautiful scenery. It's amazing. Again, I was able to tour the location. It's very family friendly. I like the fact that you guys have a little donation area where you can donate books to the children, and children are able to have the opportunity to receive books. You guys provided a lot of resources, and it's definitely a lot of area for children. I'm a spouse myself and have 4 children, so I love the scenery. It's outdoors. It's just a beautiful place. So just thank you for what you guys are doing, and I look forward to touring again.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate those words that you've actually been on the property. So you're speaking to all of those sitting there with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you again, Ms. Juergens. Thank you, Councilman Davis, for bringing Ms. Juergens, inviting her to the meeting to tell us about this wonderful operation. We look forward to coming to see you after COVID.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ingram.
Well, thank you, Mayor. So I have a few announcements. I first want to start by saying, even in the midst of us being in this pandemic, we have opportunities to still celebrate and honor each other. And with that being said, I want to wish a happy birthday to Miss Annie Wright, a Savoy Heights long life resident who will be 90 years old this Thursday. And on this Saturday, we will be hosting a drive-through birthday party for her in the neighborhood. She lives on Pearly, and if you want to come out and celebrate with us, you're more than welcome. And she is very excited to be celebrating her birthday this Thursday. Secondly, as always, your deadline for the census is September 30th. You can visit my2020census.org.gov, or call 1-844-330-2020. There are 13 languages available for you. And Mr. Bullard did speak about this briefly. We are in very different climates right now, and I also want to remind our residents, especially my District 2 residents, that we are in hurricane season. So help us by making sure your storm drains are clean. I know for some communities that might not help much, but please, do your part by making sure your storm drains are cleaned. If you can't necessarily get out there and do it, call me and I'll see if call us and we'll see if we can get you some help. And finally, Mr. Bullitt also mentioned when we're looking at this pandemic, one of the biggest days that are coming up is November 3rd. And how we're going to handle that, how the county is going to handle that. And so with that being said, Board of Elections is offering about 200 positions for precinct officials. They are paid positions, and so you can start by going to electionready.net if you are interested, and also you can reach out by calling 910-678-7733. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, and just to reiterate, two very important topics that Councilwoman Ingram has talked about. The census, we received a phone call, one of 63 cities that received a phone call from the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, telling us that please, begging and pleading that our community respond to the census, that we have tens of millions of dollars that we are set to lose if we do not respond in kind. So we're asking everyone to please take just a few minutes, complete your census. It's very easy, very simple. Less than 5 minutes if you could. If you're not a computer literate person, they sent you a mail request. It takes less than a couple of minutes, postage paid. Please do that. Your community needs you. And secondly, one of the most important fundamental rights of our democracy is the voting. Mr. Bullitt talked about we don't really know what COVID will bring to this process on November 3rd, but there's an opportunity to do it early and get it out of the way. And that is October the 15th through 31st, early voting. Please take advantage of that so that we are not caught in a situation and you're not exercising your fundamental rights to decide who makes decisions about your lives. Very important. So those two things. So thank you, Councilwoman, for reiterating those. And also, I'll go now to Mayor Pro Tem. About 100 years ago, something very special happened. Tell us about it.
Great thing happened 100 years ago. On August 26th, we are going to be celebrating the 19th Amendment that gave the women constitutional right to vote. That will happen on August 26th. So with that being said, I was checking out my emails last night and I found some things in spam. So nationwide, people are going to be illuminating their buildings purple and gold for the night of the 26th and it is called Forward into the Light. So I will tell you, for people that are listening to me and people that know me know that I do not wear purple, have never wore purple, and it's just not something I do. I was raised that you don't wear purple. But I will tell you, I'm going to wear purple on August 26th, and I am challenging every woman, young girl out there to wear purple or gold on Thursday. There was a lot of women that broke a lot of glass ceilings, especially for the women sitting up here, to help us get to where we are. I can also tell you that there will be a business on Ramsey Street that will have purple and gold dresses on Thursday, August 26th, and it will be lit up. And I am challenging my small business friends here in Fayetteville for some way to hashtag. The hashtags that they have are at Women's Vote 100, hashtag Forward into the Light, and if you would like more information, it is womensvote100.org, and it will show you all the municipality buildings that will be lit up through the country. So please hashtag wear your purple, wear your gold. You won't see me wear purple much. It'll probably be the first time in my 55 years, and maybe I can count on one hand that I've wore purple. So I challenge everybody to, and let me see your hashtag so we can repost you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and to my colleague, Councilmember Davis. The purple and gold is not for Omega Psi-Phi, so stop getting excited. But thank you for that very important part of our history in the United States, 100 years ago, to be celebrated for sure. So with that, we'll move in. We'll conclude our announcements. I think we've covered everyone that had made. Oh, Councilwoman Banks, did you tell me an announcement? No? All right. So we'll move into the approval of the agenda. Council, I'll look to you for a motion to approve the agenda.
So be it, Mr. Mayor.
So there is and council, let me just reiterate a few ground rules because we're operating somewhat with Zoom and in combination here. If you could, please show your lights. Those council members who are remote, if you could maybe use the chat system through Zoom when you need to be recognized, and we'll depend on Brooke and the clerk for that. But there's a motion by Councilmember Wright. There's a second by Councilmember Hare to approve the agenda. Any discussion on the motion? All right, council, I'll look to you for your votes. Is that discussion or will you vote? Councilmember Banks McLaughlin? As a vote? Okay, all right, this motion is to approve the agenda. All right, Councilman, can you bring our council members back up on screen, Brooke? Councilmember Davis and Waddell? We're trying to bring your picture back up. Both green. All right. So, Madam Clerk, that is unanimous by all council members. Motion carries. Item 6.0 is the consent agenda. Councilmember Waddell, I think, has something that you would like to pull.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item 6.07 for an up-down vote.
Okay. All right. Any other, City Councilman Hare?
Yes, sir, Mayor, if this is the time.
Okay.
Okay, as I was going to say, Mayor, if this is the time, item 6.06, I would like for us to add, as we approve to apply for the Choice Neighborhood Planning Grant, that we also add on there that we work with the Housing Authority.
So we'll pull that for up and down along with 6.07, then I'll recognize you on that, okay? Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to pull 6.03 for questions.
3, okay. All right, anything else, council? All right. So if we could get a motion to approve consent with the exception of item 6.03, 6.06, and 6.07. Councilman Hare?
So move, sir.
All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Hare for the approval of the consent with those exceptions. There's a second by Councilmember Kinston. Any discussion on the motion? All right, council, I'll look to you for your votes. Councilman Waddell and Davis, Councilwoman Waddell and Councilman Davis?
Green.
Okay.
She said green.
She said green? Okay.
I did, yes, green.
Okay, all right. Motion carries, Madam Clerk, as unanimous. Item 6.03, Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. Could someone come up regarding the watershed, stormwater? Do we have anybody here?
Yes, ma'am. See, if Tracy is here. As she's coming up, though, this item, as it described in the executive summary, council is asked to adopt Capital Project Ordinance Amendment 2021-29 and 2021-30 to transfer the funding allocated for watershed studies from the general FY21 Stormwater Improvements Capital Project to the specific Watershed Studies Capital Project. The $3.5 million appropriation was inappropriately appropriated to the incorrect capital project on June 29th, 2020, when you adopted the budget.
Well, good afternoon. I just have a few questions.
Yes, ma'am.
As of right now, how many watersheds do we currently have in our city, just approximately?
You've crossed over from the financial realm to the stormwater realm, so I don't know if Ms. Sheila's here.
I think it is 13 different watersheds that we have in the city.
How many?
I think it's 13.
About 13. Okay, well, I guess my question is, we've already identified a large percentage of those flooding zones, correct? And I guess my question is, with the watershed, as far as right now, how much improvement have we had since the original watershed study has been taking place? Where are we at right now?
In my lifetime with the city of Fayetteville in 2004, and a little bit before that, we started our stormwater management program. As it relates to programs in the city our size, this is a fairly new program. The council, a year and a half ago, approved for us to go on a 3-year plan, 3.5-year plan to study all of the watersheds and come back with projects from those. You are correct that as part of that work, we have identified areas which frequently flood or are low-lying, and those are some of the areas in which the staff and the consultants are giving primary consideration to where we study. But the item before you is designed to move money from the watershed study that was inappropriately put there to put it into the project accounts, reverse from the project account into watershed studies so that we can actually complete that work. That is the item before, but we actually can come back with, at the September work session, if it pleases the council, with a little bit more narrative about where we are in the overall watershed studies project, and give information on that. But and this also came up as some of the members of council who were in the dinner meeting heard. In order to study a watershed, it takes months and months and months and a lot of money. And then after that, you have to actually pull out projects that would be needed to address some of the flooding concerns. This watershed study is just the beginning process of that to be able to identify those projects which would benefit all of the folks who live in those particular watersheds. But it is a much larger conversation than what we had planned tonight, but we can get you there in council as part of the discussion in September when we bring back information on the Locks Creek flooding concerns.
So then, Mayor, if you don't, okay, so I guess my third question was to find out the difference between the stormwater improvement versus the watershed. What does the watershed consist of?
So
And the reason I asked that because it seemed that we should move in a better direction as it relates to the stormwater improvement versus the watershed by us already kind of knowing where we are with the study.
And Tracy, our director is actually on and can try to answer some of those questions. But again, this is moving the money from the wrong account so that we can begin the watershed study for this upcoming year. But Sheila, did you hear that question?
I did. So the question is, what is the difference between allocating money between the watershed planning effort versus the stormwater improvements? And the fundamental difference is that previously when we did CIP projects, we did them based on anecdotal information regarding where it flooded, so on and so forth. We did not have a systematic process by which we confirmed, at least to the best of our ability, the areas that flood and the ones that flood the most. So this watershed effort is a commitment on our community's part to understand the areas that flood the most and then to study them to understand which areas flood, which are the most impacted areas, and then move forward with possible improvement projects for those areas. We don't have, unlike most municipalities our size who have planned areas, they have studies that they have on the plans for that they've developed over the last 10, 15 years. We had none, almost none. We had a few isolated, small area studies. So this watershed study master planning effort will allow us to identify areas that are impacted the most, citywide, not specific to areas that may have complaints, but areas citywide that have problems. And then from there, go on to study them in terms of improvements and determine from a CIP allotment, post that, where we can spend monies for improvements.
Thank you. So again, this is additional study.
It's not additional, ma'am. It's what the council appropriated. Well, the council agreed to move forward with watershed study effort 5 years ago. And this is the money that the council agreed to as part of that effort that we are appropriating every year towards that effort. So we have, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ms. Sheila.
So we came to council in January of 2020 and committed to council that we would have had all of these studies done over a period of 3 years. And we're committed to that process. And this is phase 2 of that process.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sheila.
Thank you,
So,
ma'am.
Councilmember Banks McLaughlin, just a little historical perspective. We were putting money away at a very low rate for the last several years prior to, I think, maybe last budget before last, where we could do about 1.5 projects per year. These projects have to have plans drawn, and one watershed study may have told us 10 different projects that were in that particular watershed, and I think we need a total of 13, but the council made a decision some time ago to put the emphasis in the plans, because even though we're collecting the money, it's just like building a house. You may have the loan, but without a set of blueprints, you can't do the construction. So the watershed is kind of like gives us the blueprints to tell us where the projects are needed. And I think if I hear the city manager correct, when we approved the budget, you just had the allocation of this in the wrong category. And so this is basically transferring from where it was approved in the budget to the appropriate one so that we can continue down that road, right? And just for the general public, I know we've given you a lot of mumbo jumbo, but the long and short is there's a separate fund for stormwater called an enterprise fund. There's a fee that's collected each year, and those monies are put to work to improve the stormwater system in our community. And we have a lot of projects, we have a lot of problems, and so we're trying to take that money and do the best we can with what comes in. So that's kind of a summarization of all of that. I know there's a lot of technical discussion, but I just kind of wanted to give us an idea. But I did see Councilwoman Banks McLaughlin, were you good on that, or you had some addition?
Well, no. That makes sense, but I guess I was just trying to make sure that the previous watershed studies that we've had that were identified were those, were they already taken care of before we moved to the next level, the next stage?
So that first watershed study, Mr. Manager, fleshed out like 13 or 14 projects, so we're still in the process of doing those, right?
Yeah, and as you get more studies completed, every so often you'll also reprioritize the list because you'll have more information. And ultimately where we want to go in the councils and support is that, let's say that you are trying to incentivize development in a particular area. If stormwater becomes one of those impediments, then the city might partner to do something regionally. Or it also could identify how people who are building items, such as we had over at, is it Market Fair? How they're also able to help with stormwater that may be in Chestnut Hills and other places like that too. And just a correction as well, I mentioned there were 13 watersheds, there are actually 15.
15.
So, but that is the item tonight, Mayor and Council.
Good. All right. Councilman Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. So Sheila, if you can help us, since we're talking about these stormwater projects, where does Wayland Drive fit in the assessment of your stormwater projects? And could you kind of, because I think for the public to understand the magnitude of our stormwater projects, we were saying about 13, 14 projects within a study, and put a price range on those so people can understand the magnitude. But the first question is, where does Wayland Drive, because it's flooded every time it rains hard now, where does it fit in on this assessment? And do you have them on that list?
So, certainly. So what we did is, if you recall, I'm going to address the question in two formats. Number one, there was a question about what happened.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So there was a question about, what happened to the watershed that we completed. And I think the challenge is that if you pick one small area and you decide to do a watershed study on that one area.
The first question was about Wayland Drive.
Wayland Drive, right. So with Wayland Drive, what we did, let me go back up a little bit. What we did in order to make sure that we have a fair and transparent process is that we did a high-level study where we looked at the entire city, and from that process, we identified within the 15 watersheds all the areas that we believe are the highest priority areas to be further studied. Now, we cannot go back, we cannot do all of them the first year. So from that first process, we went back and we phased the projects, the areas to be studied in three broad phases. Phase one were the highest priority ones from 4 watersheds, which we shared with the council a few months ago, and which I'll be happy to share again. Wayland Drive is not part of that first cut. I believe Wayland Drive is part of the second batch, which I will confirm and get back to you regarding the larger, in terms of where it stands with the larger watershed study. Now, when I went back and we had specific concerns regarding Wayland Drive, we went back and we looked to see if it fell within the high priority areas, as I noted, as part of the high level planning study, and it did. It was not part of the first batch that we let out. However, because of the numerous complaints that we subsequently had, we did a sidebar modeling analysis because it involved some other considerations from DOT, and we wanted to get ahead of the game. And so we have been doing smaller scale modeling work, which is the information that we have provided you most recently in the conversation that we had about 2 weeks ago. Those were modeling that we have done aside from the watershed effort because we were trying to get ahead of the commitments that DOT was providing us.
For the sake of time, I just have this one last question. How do we reprioritize and make Wayland Drive a priority in our first wave, if that's possible, or those projects were chosen? And you mentioned, based on the urgency of what's going on over there, that it did reach a high priority. So my question is, can we prioritize Wayland Drive to put it on a higher priority so we can get it done, whatever we can do over there to put it on higher on that priority list?
We already are, sir. We're already having modelers analyze, like what I committed to you in the conversation that we had 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
We already have committed to modeling it aside from the watershed study because DOT is already committed to helping us through that effort, and the state has. And so we are already committed to modeling that and providing the cost estimates as we committed to you.
And finally, in your estimation, how long is it going to take? Is this we're talking years?
No. So for what we talked about 2 weeks ago, about a week ago, we plan to come back to you within 2 to 3 weeks regarding what an alternative is for that area and what it would cost, where there will be multiple partners involved in providing a possible solution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Wright. Councilmember Ingram.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Sheila, and thank you, City Manager, for the overview. And I know this item is pretty much about the financial aspect of it, but, you know, as we are discussing the watershed and the stormwater program, I don't want to confuse our residents and listening audience. And so I want to jump back really quickly to January when you brought the master plan to us, and just kind of remind, you know, everyone where we were with that, and you can kind of confirm or deny, but I do believe that coming out of that, our next steps were onboarding the consultants, the asset management, economic development, identifying the quick start projects, which we've pretty much done and we voted on a few weeks ago, as you mentioned. Flood warning systems. You showed us this really neat system that identifies flood zones and you know how we prioritize those flood zones, and then you would go into our I guess public outreach. Is that correct?
Yeah, those are all initiatives that we're working on in parallel, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you. And so with that, in that same stormwater plan, and watershed study plan, you identified how prioritization would happen. Is that correct?
So in the high level plan, the first thing that we did was to identify which watersheds or sub watersheds or subcatchments to study first. And you have the entire city. We have about 100 square miles. You know,
And
where
Miss
do I
Sheila,
start?
Miss Sheila, I don't mean to interrupt you, but as
Right.
I don't want to take you all the way through a lot of what you've already said and explained,
Uh-huh.
I just wanted you to confirm that you've walked us through the prioritization efforts behind this.
Oh, right, I did. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yes, we did. We did come to council and we provided the prioritization method.
Okay, and so I'll look forward to receiving information on Wayland Drive and of course Locks Creek in coming weeks. Thank
Lo-
you.
Locks-
Well, unfortunately, when they come back and ask for money, all that prioritization and conversation starts all over again. But great questions. Council Member Dawkins.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 6.03.
All right. There's a motion by Councilman Dawkins, a second by Councilmember Ingram. Any discussion on the motion? I think we've discussed it very thoroughly. All right, Council, I look to you for your votes. Council members Waddell and Davis.
Green.
Councilmember Davis? He thumbs up?
Green,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Madam Clerk, that's unanimous. All right, good job, Council. All right, item 6.06, Councilman Hare.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is what we spoke about last week, about approving the Choice Neighborhood Grant. So what I would like to do is make a motion that we approve the resolution giving the city manager the authority to sign the resolution, but also to include that that we work hand in hand with our Fayetteville Metropolitan Housing Authority.
Thank you. There's a motion by Councilmember Hare. There's a second by Councilmember Ingram to approve this item with the language as specified by Councilmember Hare. Any discussion on the motion? Is that a vote or a discussion? All right, Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. With this Choice Neighborhood Planning Grant, now does this cover choice vouchers along with public housing? Or is it just going strictly towards, this money would be straight allocated towards the Murchison?
And just, Chris,
What's going on with our audio tonight?
not quite sure. Just to read this, so a lot of folks at home may not understand it, but Chris, if you want to go up. The Choice Neighborhood Program leverages significant public and private dollars to support locally driven strategies that address struggling neighborhoods with distressed public housing through a comprehensive approach to neighborhood transformation. The first step of the program is to develop a comprehensive neighborhood revitalization plan which focuses on directing resources to address three core goals: housing, people, and neighborhoods. To achieve these core goals, communities must develop and implement a comprehensive neighborhood revitalization strategy or transformation plan. The transformation plan will become the guiding document for the revitalization of the public and/or assisted housing units while simultaneously directing transformation of the surrounding neighborhood and positive outcomes for families. The Choice Planning Grant makes up to $450,000 available for the development of the transformation plan and early action project. The Choice Neighborhood Grant requires a collaboration between the Fayetteville Metropolitan Housing Authority and the city, and is centered on existing public housing development. An analysis is currently underway of the Murchison Townhomes or Rosemary Street, on Rosemary Street, to describe the physical needs of the property. A memorandum of understanding and an approving resolution are required to be adopted by both the City Council and the Housing Authority to solidify that partnership, and that is also included in the packet tonight.
That's correct.
So if you could answer, I guess, the question that was posed by Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Yes, ma'am. So there's lots of housing resources that come into Fayetteville from federal, state, local resources that we pour into it. So part of what we're looking at doing here is to take a broad look at all of the resources that we have at our disposal between us, the Housing Authority, public-private partnerships, the community at large, and to bring all that to bear into a transformative plan for the neighborhood. So hopefully what we'll get out of this is a document that will tell us what the community wants out of the neighborhood, what resources we have, what the problems are, and what the solutions will be.
Thank you. So we are going to allow the community to come in and give their feedback.
Oh, definitely. That's the beauty of the choice program, is that it is completely driven by community advisory and steering groups.
Okay, thank you.
And they've already started reaching out to the community, and I know Councilmember Harris and others are trying to. You had a
Mayor,
question?
do you have?
Yeah, we still have a motion and a second, but there is, in the discussion phase, Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
I'm sorry to keep bothering you. Just my last question. So again, too, because I read where it said a mixed residential. When you guys speak of mixed residential, are we saying that an area that's already have development already set up, building within that community, or are we speaking of like how District 7 on Bunts Road, where it's just the actual community of HUD housing?
So as beautiful as Oak Ridge is, what we'd be looking at doing here is trying to provide some mixed income where we'll have multiple price point housing. You would have the housing authority properties. The best example I can give you is from Newport News in Virginia, where Dr. Whitfield came from. So they tore down and replaced 140 units of housing authority property. They then added 120 additional units of affordable housing and 100 units of market rate. So that's what we would be looking at doing, is trying to figure out those partnerships, that public-private partnership that we can put together to be able to create something that's sustainable, that maintains the character of the neighborhood, but also does bring in a variety of housing choice.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilmember Kinston, did you have oh, you were voting. That's what I'm talking about. All right, Council, let's, Madam Clerk, you had, Councilmember Waddell.
Thank you. So I think my question about the motion is, given the fact that the information presented by the city manager and also that's in our CAM already indicated the necessity for a partnership with the housing authority, I'm wondering if we can get a little clarification on the purpose of including that verbiage in this particular motion, because it's already written into the purpose and the way that this is executed. So I just need a little bit of understanding on what the motion is entailing in addition to what's already spelled out by the agreement.
Well, Councilwoman, I'll try to pick that up. I know that there had been some discussions with Ms. Dawn Weeks and city staff about the application process. I think at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that there's complete communication between the two bodies and the boards. I think their board is going to put some specifics in there about it. I know there's an organizational chart that you're referencing that basically shows the connection, but of course, so that this is not caught up in formalities, both boards, I think, will put in their action that they work in tandem with one another to make sure that we increase the likelihood of success. Did I summarize that up, sir?
Yeah, just real briefly, since March, we have been meeting almost weekly with Dawn Weeks and her staff and the consultants that she has on board, helping her with long-range planning of the Housing Authority. Every step of the way, including identifying what location we're going to use and talking about what we're going to do for the neighborhood and what resources they have. We've had a very strong partnership. I couldn't get where I'm at right now without Dawn Weeks. So, yeah.
Mr. Colley and Mayor Cole, just to be very clear, I want to make sure that I'm understanding that we are not trying to modify the consultant agreement. We're not trying to modify anything that was brought to us during the work session. We're simply just reiterating that we expect for this communication to continue and for the housing authority to continue in the role that they've been operating in. Is that accurate?
Oh, I think with the motion that Councilmember Hare had, I think that summarized it, but I think his motion specifically said that they would work in collaboration with the housing authority. If there's we have a motion on the floor, and in the event that you are not in agreement or vote not in the affirmative, then you could present a counter motion. But I think that kind of summarized it. I think we're saying the same thing.
I don't understand it. So it's not that I'm not in agreement. I'm just trying to get clarification so that I can make sure.
I understand what you're saying. I think his motion says that they would work in collaboration. I didn't think it went in detail about what that looked like, but from what I'm hearing from community development, that they are working in conjunction with one another. But as I said before, there was a goal to make sure that the board's efforts showed that they were collaboration. So if I don't know if that answered your question, but let me reset these votes, Council. Did you have anything further to add, Council Member?
I would like for the city manager to, city manager, do you understand my question?
I do, and I think that Councilmember Hare's motion is consistent with the item which is in the packet.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so Councilmember Hare has a motion to agree to approve with the instruction that the city and housing authority continue the collaboration. There's a second by Councilmember Ingram. We've had thorough discussion. All right, Council, I'll look to you for your votes on this particular item. It's his vote, yes, sir. All right, council members Waddell and Davis.
Green.
Green.
All right, Madam Clerk, that's unanimous.
Mr. Cawley, I just want to commend you and your efforts these last couple of months. I think it's worth it, and you've been able to step up and really be very active in getting us our needs and really continuing the work of economic and community development. And I think it's worth honoring. And so I just want to commend you and thank you for your efforts.
Good job, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. I love it, and my team loves it, so it's easy to do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, item 6.07, Councilmember Waddell.
And before we start with that and take her question, for the folks at home, I'm going to try where we have these items on consent to at least give a little preface so that the folks watching at home know what we're talking about, Mayor. The city received a request from the Fayetteville Dogwood Festival for $50,000 of financial support due to COVID impacts on their operations. The City Council considered this request at the August 5th, 2020 work session, and a consensus of council was to approve the release of $27,000 to the Fayetteville Dogwood Festival and defer $1,000 of building rent payments for the period of July 2020 through October 2020. This action is to appropriate $12,000 from the adopted FY21 budget and include the remaining $15,000, which was not appropriated in FY 2020 as part of the fiscal year designations process, which will happen later this fall. The funds are to be specifically to use to aid in event programming. The council's discussion at your work session was that the money not be used for operating expenses, but rather only if events or the festival or festival events are held. So it would be in support of actually an event, not ongoing carrying cost.
Mr. Hewitt, you made this so easy for me because that's exactly what I was going to say. So I'm prepared to make a motion that we approve the appropriation of the $12,000 from the adopted FY 2021 budget and include the remaining $15,000 in the FY 2020 as of end of fiscal year designation later this fall for a total of $27,000 in the financial assistance to the Fayetteville Dogwood Festival. Thank you so much for summarizing that for me so that we can just keep this train rolling.
All right, there's a motion. Councilmember Waddell, that motion was based on the contingencies mentioned. That wasn't in the CAM, but I think he said it verbally. I just want to hear you wrap it up in that. So,
absolutely based on
okay, all right, based on the events occurring. All right. So there's a motion by Councilmember Waddell to approve with the conditions as stated. There was a second by Councilmember Ingram, I think I heard, and lights for Councilmember Ingram.
Mayor, I also did not include the portion, so let me also include the portion that says and waive the building rent payments for the period of July 2020 through October 2020.
Okay, so let me try to wrap this up. There's a motion to approve, which was the allocation of $12,000 from the previous fiscal year, the $15,000 that would have been anticipated from FY 2021, and the waiver of the $1,000 rent as requested, contingent upon the events occurring. So there was a motion by Councilmember Waddell. There was a second by Councilmembers Ingram.
Question.
Okay, there's a question by discussion. Councilman
Yes,
here.
In the executive summary of this item, it states, and which has been stated in the motion and the review, but it says that the funds are to be specifically used to aid in event programming, and I know that we're having discussions now of. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. So I understand what we've been having discussions on over the last couple of weeks concerning this item, as I look in the executive summary, the very last line says that the funds are to be used specifically to aid in event programming, and it has already been told us that due to COVID that we were not going to be having this particular event, and I assume any other events maybe this year. So kind of give me, I'm trying to get an understanding of what is the event planning? Is there anything that might pop up between now and the end of the year? I mean,
Yes, sir. Between now and the end of June 30 of 2021, the portion of the $15,000 was included in this year's fiscal year budget to support the festival that would have been held in the spring of FY21. The $12,000 was money that we would have spent this past spring for the festival. And so some of the discussions that the Dogwood Festival have had, where they were looking at an October event, which likely will be postponed because of COVID. And then every significant event or holiday that they can think of, whether it be something at Christmas or whether it be something at New Year's or something in the winter, early spring. But as it's recommended, that only if they are planning to hold an event from which our money could be used as a sponsorship of sorts, to seed money to enhance the event. That was what the original 12 was for, and that's also what the original 15 was for, but it was not to go for salaries.
so if that does not, am I still on? If that does not happen this
would not
year,
be
would
spent.
that roll over into the following budget, or does it roll back into our general fund budget?
It would not be spent, and it would be available then. It would roll back in, it would stay in the city's budget.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Kinston.
I just had one question. I know that the former director for the Dogwood Festival had resigned. My question is, with the new director coming in, if there's more of a need, would they be coming back to ask for any additional funds?
That would not be what I would recommend to them. The original. The okay.
Don't touch it. Go ahead.
Yeah, must be my aftershave. Just as a brief, very brief, when we built the stadium, we removed that parking lot, which had been used by the Dogwood Festival to hold their carnival. That was one of their main sources of income that many people wouldn't go to the actual festival, but they would actually go to the carnival. That year, it also coincided with a big push from several members who are still on council of us making sure that we had top-notch entertainment, but we also had entertainment that was diverse. And so the city became more of a funding sponsor at that point in time. Part of the consideration that the council at that time took as we were building the stadium was that the Dogwood Festival has an economic impact annually of about $8.1 million. It is also our signature event. And so continuing with that, as we built the stadium, it has allowed, we believe, the Dogwood Festival to again maintain excellent entertainment for our residents, as well as making sure that the acts were as diverse as possible. You saw that they actually had Gospel Fest and things on Sunday in the past, had an Earth, Wind, and Fire cover band, among others. They just had some really, some great talent. But under no circumstances would I recommend that we necessarily go into providing more support unless the council wanted to, because we do provide also significant support to them through parks, recreation, fire and police, traffic services, and ultimately, we also have other community events, and the council, this is something new for you as well, some of the new council members, that the council in the past had actually considered whether or not for some startups that we would fund their activities for 1 or 2 years and then try to weed wean them off of the city support. But the Dogwood Festival, International Folk Festival being our signature events here, and the Christmas parade and other things like that, Dickens Holiday, have been ones that have been city supported. But I doubt they will come back for more money, because I think the council's action tonight was, as well as at your work session, was fairly clear that this was money that was available to them last fiscal year, which was unspent, and money which was in this budget, which totals $27,000 in the rent waiver.
Thank you, City Manager. And that does answer my question. I look forward to the Dogwood Festival coming back.
Thank you.
Over.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, council, seeing no further questions during our discussion phase, we look to you for action on this motion. All right, Councilmember Waddell and Davis?
Green.
Councilman Davis? He thumbs up? Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, it's unanimous. Those present. Item 7.01, Chief Hawkins, second quarter review.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Evening.
I know I speak fast, so I'm going to consciously.
Excuse me, Chief. Chief, I can't hear you.
Okay. Audio issues.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Hold on. Don't walk up on me without my mask now. Hold on. Okay. Let me make sure if I can hear it at all, first of all. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to the slideshow. So once again, hello. This is the second quarter police report. And it's kind of, it was a little loud, kind of interesting, because I know this is only second quarter, but I kind of believe that everyone here has a new perspective for this report now, and a lot more information. So as I share it, know that I'm gonna go real slow, because I know I speak fast, but now as you gauge on how we set our strategic plans, is the first thing is, remember, this is from January through June. We have to go at a quarter of a time. It takes a couple minutes to make sure we have our numbers accurate. So one of the things we look at for the strategic plan of overall crime safety is our statistics. We analyze trends. We talk about our crime fighting strategies, and our community engagement is going to be part of this presentation on how it flows. So you're familiar with a national incident-based reporting system, which gauges the top priority of type of crimes like homicide, rape, and ag assault. In other words, what I call it, crimes against persons. So when you look at these numbers, remember from the same time last year, and if you recall, the first quarter I shared that we're always working against the previous year's numbers, and we've been on a trend for low numbers. So as we look at where we are today, we know it's a hard task to go 3 years running with you're fighting against your own numbers. So looking at homicide, is two homicides up for the time period January to June. Rape is a little down. Thank you. Ag assault, if you recall, ag assault is typically our numbers that's really high, right? Don't get too excited just yet, because remember, we'll go to the next slide, and then all other crimes that consolidate crimes against persons. So we talk about aggravated assaults. Where do we see the decrease? We see the decrease in the misdemeanor portion of aggravated assaults. But then we also see the increase in the felony portions. We've seen a number of shooting into buildings or shooting into homes and or shooting into vehicles. So every time a shooting like that happens, every person in that house is counted as an incident. So that might raise the number as well. We also talk about domestic violence is a subsection of aggravated assault. So here's another comparative number from what we're looking at last year. We've had an increase in the misdemeanors, which is like threats against in domestic violence situation, but we've had a decrease in the felony portion of domestic violence associated with aggravated assault. So that's a good thing where it's not too violent. You know, you're gonna have arguments, you're gonna have threats, but the fact that those numbers are lowering. So I want to share, as I did before, when we look at a homicide, those detectives look at many more things other than just homicides that occurred. They review incidents of overdoses. They investigate cases of suicide. But if you want to pay attention to this, because this was brought to my attention when I looked at the numbers, we've had a serious increase in natural or accidental deaths. So what is that number? You know, I'm not a doctor, but those numbers, the first thing you think is, could this be COVID? After we look at we've had 12 that's been documented, but a large number of those are elderly individuals that may have had health concerns, but we don't know. We talk about the overall safety of the community, and we talk about waiting for those responses. Remember, these are our detectives going out on those type of calls. They're not overdoses, and we also have overdoses that is high, and it's high and on track. If at this pace, we've had about 6 overdoses a month year to date, which is high, which is going to put us right around in 78 for the year if it stays that path. Sad thing, the time period. Remember, this is second quarter of the year. This is a time period we had stimulus checks go out. We saw an increase in overdoses during that time period as well. So that's something to note. So our crimes against property, that's our burglaries. We've seen the incident of those occurring, even though that time period, most people are home. Larcenies have gone down. That's good, but it also can be attributed to a lot of different things. Maybe stores are closed. But motor vehicle thefts, that's increased. What we saw in that trend was, for that time period, we had a number of juvenile stealing vehicles over and over again that we had to put some effort into investigating. And that trend, the only problem was that they were juveniles. So as a result, we really either could take them to the throughout the system, and sometimes they would be released from the detention center. So that would mean they would go back and reoffend. So we were probably chasing individuals over and over again after we caught them on the trends. Robberies were down. This is a good note because in the first quarter, if you don't recall, I'll remind you, we were up in robberies. So that trend is pretty good to say they were comparative to the second quarter were down. And then the overall properties is, when you combine everything else, is up. This is the page where we talk about clearance rate. This is the detectives, the efforts that detectives go for follow-up. And remember that numbers in the center is a fluid number. So the more the year goes, the higher those numbers increase, because detectives continue to investigate crimes that happen. They may not be able to solve or resolve it in that time period, but by the end of the year, as you can see comparatively from the full year last year compared to national average, we're always above national average, even though it is low. Our traffic fatalities, we have definitely had an increase this year of traffic fatalities compared to last year. Had 12 killed, and then the circumstances, remember, we review, it's not an accumulation of those numbers, we review the circumstances. Was it a pedestrian? Was a motor vehicle involved? Was it speeding involved? And alcohol. That helps us deploy where we have to utilize public safety announcements. Do we need to target people on motorcycles? Do we need to target pedestrian issues or target speeders? This is just our narcotics report that we give, and this is just a narcotics unit in their work and getting those type of drugs off the street, but this is not the same numbers for the whole entire department. This is just the information that we share in regards to narcotics unit. Our response times. So this is the comparative year to year last year, but January through June, this number shows a decrease, and our also response time has a slight 16-second above the target, what we want to have as far as what our goals are. This is different, just so you'll know, with the third quarter, within the last month and a half, we've had an increase in calls for service. That shows something else is going on, so we're monitoring that as well. We talk about our internal affairs, and we monitor, of course, use of force reporting, what we personally review on our own without a complaint coming in, as well as investigations that occur departmental, those are internal, and the citizen complaints are when complaints come from outside the department to us. This is our number. It's a little bit lower of what we've seen, people making complaints compared to 2019. And then we talk about our staffing, because that's our resources, our major resources. This is where we stand right from as of June 30th, 2020. We were 34 sworn short, and we are was at 13 non-sworn short. I'm going to go to share this. So, hold on, let me go back. Sorry, y'all. So I'm gonna show it from the video on this because when I played it earlier, it didn't play well. So this is the internship program. This is part of the community engagement efforts. I'll share a little bit, but this is what they created to introduce themselves. So I'll show you what they did.
That's great.
So let me go back to the internship program. We started 3 years ago, and not that one. Basically, the goal is, besides community engagement opportunities, to afford the youth, the students in our communities, an opportunity to see the police department from behind the scenes, right? And no matter what their major is, how in an organization you can utilize that major to do many different things. So we have So our students are from Fayetteville State, FTCC, Methodist. We have a student from A&T and someone from Virginia, University of Virginia. Help me out, Taylor. University of Virginia. They're all local. Either they live here, go to school here, or and only 2 of them were from last year as well, and they became the lead. The ultimate is teaching them the same thing I teach my department is empowerment of utilizing what skills you have and integrated in an organization. This year we did something different, and we made it like the organization, working together on projects together. So you just weren't assigned to one area. You had the responsibility to engage with the police department and see the different type of strategies, things we need to happen. One of the things they worked on, a few of the things they worked on many more than this, is the domestic violence unit, helping them to identify repeat offenders throughout our RMS system. They worked and created a research assessment of our COVID-19, how we do best practice, what were we doing. If you remember, they started in April with the application process. We were afraid, how are we going to be able to continue our internship program when we were trying to worry about ourselves as a department. So they started off virtual and one at a time coming in the building, but making sure they knew this PPE safety precautions. They assisted with extending our social media platform. We have a lot of new YouTube videos. They were able capturing some inspiring social media aspect and pushing that out, helping us create our PIO, looking at our graduation, creating that dialogue. Assisted in establishing, we're making a historical walls throughout the police department, telling about the police department, but making it almost like a museum. They're having good work to that. They played in our, they were a major part of our youth empowerment camp. I'll talk about that in third quarter because it occurred in July, but they won't be here, so I wanted to bring them here now and share that. And they also got feedback from different parts of the police department that wanted to have murals that inspired first responders, so they did 2 different murals, and at some time you all will be able to come and see those. Here's one of the murals in the background that's in our Crime Information Center that they designed and painted themselves. So, but they also, this is part of the start of the hallway of the museum they worked in, and they actually pushed the whole department because they had to go talk to individuals and push themselves, so they learned a great deal. Other parts of community engagement is we were able to have in this second quarter, our faith forum that was on human trafficking. The way we did that, we had half the people had to register. Most of the people had to register, but half of them came in the building, and the other half were on Zoom. So we were able to share and train on human trafficking. We were able to continue our PAL and Explorers program. We were able to also start assisting community watch groups for trying to figure out their Zoom platform, where there be training and assisting them on how to do that. So, so last time you asked, when we had the last session, of how to share that number of our community engagement in hours. So within that time period, we were able to calculate all the events that we went to in an 18-month time period. When I gave these numbers before, what by rank, who went where, and proportionally based off of just the events that were on our calendars. So you can see command staff exists, is the captains or above, captains, majors, assistant chief, and me. These are hours. Then it's a lieutenant, sergeant, officers, and civilians. How it breaks down is who is actually engaged, and these are not 911 calls. These are actually events that are scheduled, and the hours. And then we calculate these hours, and this is just wages. This is not fringe benefits. This is just the hourly wages, and how we figured out the hourly wages were. For the command staff, we were able, because a small number, get the average of everybody together. Everyone else, we did the midpoint of their salary to get that number, that wage, because it's very difficult to say which officer was where. And then the civilians, we had a general number of $20 an hour to get that number, which got this cost. But this cost was wage only, and is not fringe benefits attached to this 18-month time period. So with that, other than that, we're revisiting and reassessing, just as you are, the internal, external committees of looking at our goals, our vision, and our mission, and just open to maybe even in the future having some type of strategic plan to reassess if this is what we're going to do. So without further ado, questions?
Of course. First of all, let me say, like to commend your group here. So thank you. Let's give them a round of applause for.
They're smiling. They're just behind the mask. And
okay.
This was part of the whole pledge. They have to come to a council meeting to see what government is like. So,
y'all want to come over here where we are? We need our walls painted too. I like that. You're very talented. But thank you for that, Chief. I did have a question about them. Is there on that racial equity task force? One of the things that we talked about was to increase the organic participation of young people to be police officers.
Yes.
Internship was one of the highlighted programs. Is there a transitional way that, let's say, this group is ushered an opportunity to come into the police department as a career? If so, tell us a little bit about it.
So it's one of the invitations of saying, this is not just for criminal justice. And I'll bring an example of someone sitting behind us. So what I did was everyone had to reapply, even if you did it last year. So it's a hard application. You have to do more things. But I have 2 people who were interns last year, but I made them lead interns, so they knew the system. They knew how to work, the rules of working. And even one, she interviewed, and that's Madeline. Madeline is going to be a senior, but Madeline said she thought her process, and this was not her major of criminal justice. She's like, I think I might want to be an officer when I graduate. Right. So that was one good, but this is almost truly exposing them to forensics. We have a lot of forensics majors. We have people who may not thought they wanted to be an officer. But when we get them engaged in this program, they get to see us doing more things than just pulling vehicles over. They get to see they spend a lot of time with not just helping plan and create with the officers the youth camp, but they got to spend time with the youth. So that was one of the highlights of their internship, to see how much we are able to get engaged with youth. So this is definitely one of the programs that we have to invite youth into the police department.
And are these paid internship?
Yes, they are.
That's what I'm talking about. All right, and the last question I have before I go to council members, the overdose numbers. Of course, that was something that's somewhat concerning, but as it relates to the situation when people are locked down, when unemployment is up, are those correlated to these numbers, you think, or this may be kind of a one-side anomaly of a bad product in our community, or what do you think?
So we do both. We monitor the bad products when they overdose. So that's part of the investigation to see who it is, what were they overdosing on, and what was the last product. So we continue that because it's totally not eliminated that it's just an overdose. We want to make sure if it's a bad product, so we monitor that also. On these cases, because they're high, the only thing that we see a correlation with what we're able to share is the second quarter we had the stimulus checks released, and we had an influx in people looking for prostitution opportunities, people looking for drugs. You know, it's a sad case, but that's what we noticed. So other than outside that, I can't.
Okay. Disclose. I got you. All right. Thank you, Councilmember Ingram.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess I need to give a little disclaimer in case I get a little passionate about this discussion, because when I think about and I look at this report, and I drive around my district and live in my district and spend time with my district, we are heavily impacted. And the overdoses, gun violence, robberies. And I'm not saying this to you, Chief Hawkins. I'm saying this to the residents and the citizens. It's got to stop. If you have an overdose over a drug addiction, you can call the police and say, I need help, and you won't get arrested.
Yeah, we have a lead program.
They will connect you to the services that you need. It is not worth your life, and it is not worth someone else's life due to gun violence, overdose, or selling drugs. And I just want to be very clear about that. As I stated before, and I'm glad you brought it up, when stimulus checks started happening, I think I called city manager. I said, city manager, something's going on. Communities that are already impacted on a day-to-day basis due to this nonsense are getting hit even more. And I'm going to say it again, it has to stop. Think about your community. Think about the people you love and care about. Think about the children that live in this community. Thank you, Mayor. Oh, one more. I'm so sorry. I got a little carried away. One more thing. I want to commend the interns for taking this step, especially in the climate that we are in right now. It is enough to say, you know what? Never mind. So I want to commend you all for taking this step to say, you know what? I can be a part of that change. I'm going to become the badge, or I'm going to see where I can put my foot in that door. And I saw her, but I think she should have got a little introduction too. And so I just want to say we miss Mila, and she's a little intern as well.
So, and just to note, our intern started in the beginning of May. So they also, remember, had to endure with us COVID and the civil unrest. So literally from behind the scenes. So that was something for them to have to, one, either decide I'm covering up what my name says on my uniform and walking in, but we got feedback from, they saw it from both sides and saying, you know, worried, afraid, unsure. So they saw it from behind the scenes, which was reality.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Ingram. And Council, make sure as we're using this is for a question session for Chief. So make sure we will end that with a question. I think we all just over elated by Chief and her future. Yeah, I'm no. I mean, you have the red button, so we've got you up to. I got you, Councilman Wright.
Thank you, Chief. We know your job is very tough, and especially through this pandemic and the civil unrest with what's been going on. But I have a question concerning body cameras. What is your policy on body cameras, and can you talk to our listening audience a little bit? Because I learned some things in the delay of the camera. I think it was 2 or 3 minutes that when the police goes up to a scene, it's already recording.
That is correct. It's
So
a
help
minute.
us out with that.
So, and if your question is, if the body cameras right now, we have body cameras and in-car cameras. So whenever lights are triggered, can trigger it. But if they're outside and engaged, they tap the body-worn camera on their chest if they're not in their car to start it. That start is not the moment they tap it. To get it started, that moment is 1 minute beforehand, so that it is always recording. And as soon as they tap it, and even if they forget to tap it, it'll capture 1 minute back from where everything started. So if that helped clarify anything. So like you hit the button, let me hit the button on my cell phone. It doesn't start there. It starts 1 minute. So 1 minute's a long time also to happen what occurred before you hit the button.
So how often do we have incidents where a police camera is not turned on?
It happens, but I'll share with this. It happens on very few times because officers use those cameras as a safety and it protects them. Absolutely. So they use it and they can tell if they'll keep tapping. But the other thing is this, there's typically another officer around, their video's being captured if one malfunctions in any way, but it's very rare that video camera is not turned on, especially because we've had them now since 2016. We have a young police department also, so they're trained on nothing but knowing body-worn camera.
Absolutely. Thank you. And finally, Mayor, I want to thank you for your interns, and I noticed that the majority of them are female, and that's great. And my question is are more females interested in law enforcement now these days? Because
I would hope so. I would hope so. We actually, but we have 2 interns. One had to go back to school already, 2 male interns. But we recruit all of them. Trust me, we recruit male and female. We make it as diverse. You see all the.
Absolutely.
So Fayetteville Police Department is more than the percentage of the nation. The average percentage of the nation runs from 10 to 13% on the department that are females. We actually hold a 19%, which is good, but it can be better. So, yes.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Wright. Councilmember Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. Even though Councilman Wright took one of my questions and comments, but I just wanted to thank you, Chief, and also commend these young, beautiful ladies and men for their hard work and dedication. I do have another question for those who would like to apply for next year. How do they go about applying for this intern position?
So what we do is we post it right around March because we assume that in May schools will be out and coming. So we put the applications right around March. We give it about 30 days. They have to submit it, and then we go through a filter system. You have to turn in answer a lot of questions, turn in a resume, and just submit it. And we try to vet through as many interviews as possible. So right around March is where we'll have it again next year.
So how many slots do you have available each year? Does it vary?
It does vary. We want to take everybody, but we can't. We try to keep it around 10. We went a little over because there were so many good candidates, and then so we had. Give me the count again, Tammy, Miss Tammy. No, not applications, interns. 10. But we want more. So trying to budget-wise, we just don't pay them minimum wage as well. They work hard, so we pay them $12 an hour. So, but we work them too. They worked.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Kinston.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Hawkins, if you don't mind, can you go back to the slide where it has the traffic fatalities?
Yes, ma'am.
Something just stuck out, and I wanted to ask you a question about that one.
I'll get to it. You go ahead and ask your question.
So the very last column or very last slide on that one, it shows under 18.
Yes.
And it showed 0.
That fatalities.
Fatalities.
Yes.
So, which is great because we didn't have any fatalities. But my question is, with teenage drivers, is that indication to rules, regulations? I mean, what about teenage drivers now? is there any percent that you can give us as far as ticket stops or anything with them? Because that's such important, you know, you have new drivers out there, and that, to me, that number, because it is 0, you know, are they following the rules? Is there any recommendation or anything that you can?
So let me share what this number says. These are just the fatalities of any drivers that were under 18 years of age. Thank goodness there were not any, and I'm hoping that we never do a PSA on that. But it doesn't mean that they don't get in an accident, but we have, thank goodness, not have them as the actual driver, and that be the circumstance, so.
Okay. All right, thank you for explaining that.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Waddell?
I'm fine, thank you. My question was answered already.
Thank you. Councilmember Ingram, second round.
Thank you, Mayor. So, I do actually have questions now. When it comes down to two questions, natural accidents versus natural deaths, I think that was, versus accidental.
Yep.
Why are they lumped together? So when I think of accidental, it would have been to something like I fell off of something and I passed away, or what? Can you explain that versus natural? Or no?
I honestly cannot.
Okay.
This is the medical terminology. You can't. Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Hallelujah. Thank you.
Yeah. So basically, the state has 4 categories for death. So it's natural, accidental, homicide, and suicide. And so, if it doesn't fit into one of those categories, then it could be why she's lumped it together. Because if it's not a homicide or suicide, then they'll consider it natural. But it may have been for the sake of this report. Was that the basis of your question?
I just
or what
wanted
the
to kind of
difference
make
was?
sure, like if I accidentally murdered someone.
No.
Okay, that's not in this.
No.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. So then my second question is, when we go down to the property crimes, can you explain the city of Fayetteville's duty to property and the crimes on property? And I wanna start by saying this. If I know that Fayetteville police departments and sheriffs have where they can be hired for, I guess, events, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that also include to be hired to protect property?
You can hire off-duty officers or security to protect your property. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but on a day-to-day duty of an officer, that doesn't fall within your duties.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Yes, if we see someone breaking into a house or breaking into a business, we will do everything to stop that.
To stop it.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily your duty to be standing outside of a building 24/7 unless you've been hired.
That is correct. It's not, we cannot commit to just one house or one business or one location while we're on duty.
But you're stopping it if you see it.
Absolutely.
Or if you get a
we get a call, we will respond. If we see it, we'll respond and take action. Yes.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Chief, I think that takes care of all the questions. Thank you. You didn't push your button? Oh, yeah, you did. All right.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, thank you very much for your report. I have a question. When you put out that 27,083 hours were towards community and things. Engagement.
Yes.
Was that for 12 months or was that for 18 months?
That particular one was, remember, if I came back a couple of months ago and discussed our hours, that was 18 months from January 2019 to June of 2020 of what we had captured in that year and a half time period. And we went back on our calendar, so that was for 18 months.
Okay, so of course I did a little bit of math.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I realized that it was 18 months instead of 12 months. So what I figured out was, out of that 18 months, just to give the listening audience and see if I'm correct on this, was 1,540.61 hours a month that we are doing in community policing. And I didn't have time, when I realized it was 18 months, to do it. But if you even do that, and if you divide that by 30, it equals out to about 49 hours a day.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, those are some, and I just didn't know if you had done the numbers.
did,
and I wanted to make
did.
sure.
We've done the math.
Those are, and an average work day is 8 hours a day.
For a normal person.
Well, not for the police, but for a normal person is 8 hours a day. So you're looking at, at 48 hours, you're looking at 6 police officers, 365 days a year, working a normal day in our city.
And
is that about?
We calculated a little bit more, 35 hours a day, meaning that it's not me, where I might have 2 hours here or an hour there. Another officer may have this many hours, but when you calculate the hours of all people working within our community doing different things and at multiple places, yes, that's how it calculates.
So, it's very impressive. So thank you for what you do. Thank you.
And before I go to Councilman Wright for the second time, I wanted to reiterate something now. Those are community events, not necessarily community policing.
That is correct.
Okay.
These
so
are
there's a difference.
That is absolutely correct. These are scheduled events.
Right.
That is whether we initiate it like a faith forum or we're invited to it like a school invite or a community watch meeting.
Which is a part of the overall community
That is
policing
correct.
model.
That is correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. I mean, that is very impressive, but I just wanted to make sure there was a distinction that is not everything that's involved in community policing.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Councilman Wright.
Yes, and the mayor really took my question, and that's what he do. But, you talking 4,714 events. And so this is helping us as the chair of the external. The department is a part of what we're going to be discussing and seeing what we can do better. But this is awesome, and it really stood out as to what the police department and yourself and your staff is doing external, working with the community to be more involved in community policing. So to have 4,714 events, in what time frame are we talking?
18 months.
In 18 months. That's something to be commended. So thank you.
Thank you. And the community policing philosophy is when we are open, every encounter that we have with the community is inviting them to have feedback and listen, how can we get better? What is it that you want us to do? That's involved with the philosophy of community policing. But these opportunities, we know we're out there. And so we're looking for, and even in these time periods, there are a couple of opportunities coming up in the near future, even though we're going through COVID. So we're always being innovative and thinking of ways to continue what we're doing.
Think you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, interns. Great work.
They're leaving now,
Great work.
by the way.
All right, Council, we think before we get into the public hearing, I think we'll get a few minutes recess. Really are we need to receive the report. So is that what Councilmember Banks McLaughlin was making a motion at the end of this question she had? Okay, all right, I like that.
Yes, the only thing that I do want to ask you, Chief, for the viewer, listening audience, how can they get a hold of you to come out to community events or community watch?
So what we do our best. First of all, you have access to go to our website, go to our page, and call us if you have something, an idea that you want us to help partner with, or if you want us to help you think it through. We're open for those opportunities, but stay on our social media page, stay on our website, and give us a phone call. If you have something you want to get started, we've kind of done a lot of different things, but we're also open to new initiatives. So, like I said, we're looking for people to partner with. We don't have to just do it ourselves. We look for other department heads to say, what are you doing that we partner with? So just reach out to our website. Call the number. We have a lot of access from social media and our website.
And there's a motion at the end of that to receive the report, right?
I would like to make a motion to receive our report.
All right, and there was a second by Councilmember Ingram. We have discussed this very thoroughly. Council, look to you for your votes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. Council members Davis and Waddell?
Green.
Green it is. Motion carries. Thank you. Council, let's take just a few minutes break. We'll come back in at 5 till.
quasi-evidentiary hearings. Therefore, I'm going to be helping in that script of reviewing some of what occurs in the evidentiary hearings. For those who are watching in the audience, you may see that there are some people behind me who are socially distanced and spaced because they will be providing testimony in person, which is an element that's required when we have these types of quasi-judicial hearings. So the applicant and anyone presenting evidence during the quasi-judicial hearing will be sworn before the particular evidentiary hearing. They must be present and share that information and material of the meeting of standards for action during the hearing, and will have an opportunity to cross-examine, offer a rebuttal, and close their testimony. The mayor, as is typical, will preside over the evidentiary hearings and deliberations of the council. All members of council have a generic script that is generally being used. So depending on City Council's actions and decisions to hear, we have 3 special use cases that will be presented by the applicant with actions to be taken by the city. Craig Harmon is serving as the professional planner to the city, and City Attorney McDonald will be advising the board on legal and procedural questions. We will follow the order printed on the agenda for the special use permit under consideration. All individuals wishing to speak as witnesses should have signed up before the start of the meeting. Each person intending to present evidence or testimony is asked to now swear or affirm that the testimony they are giving is true. In Fayetteville, we ask the professional planner who is providing an overview, preview the case, and who has prepared the staff report, and anyone who may be presenting competent, material, substantial evidence to the City Council to provide sworn testimony. Anyone planning on speaking during the evidentiary hearing, please stand and be sworn in by the city clerk.
If you would all please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to now give you general instructions to the special use permits. Special use permits approvals are designed to allow the City Council to deliberate if the use or activity can fit into the proposal as proposed, fit with reasonable conditions or flexibility in location, design, and methods of operation, or is not appropriate at the location in the city. If approved or approved with conditions, the special use permit remains with the land unless specifically conditioned as part of the approval. The City of Fayetteville City Council collects the evidence associated with the special use permit through an evidentiary hearing. In the hearing, the professional staff will first present an overview of the case. This is then followed by the applicant's presentation, and then those supporting and or opposing the application. It is the role of the applicant to present their case and how it meets the standards necessary to grant a special use permit. There are 8 standards for the applicant to address to demonstrate how the use or activity will appropriately fit in particular location requested. These standards become the finding of fact for the quasi-judicial decision. The burden of presenting evidence, sufficient evidence, to meet the standards rests with the applicant. There's a prima facie entitlement to the SUP, which means essentially the applicant in presenting their information, first evidence, it's presumed to be accurate until you hear different. That's what prima facie means. Are entitled to the SUP, according to David Owens, if the applicant presents uncontroverted, competent, substantial, and material evidence that the standards have been met. Findings of fact will be determined by the evidence, not speculative objections presented during the evidentiary hearing. Recommendations from the preliminary review made by the Zoning Commission do not serve as a basis for City Council. Continuing with the script, it would be a disclosure, and this is where the mayor will continue, and I will be here if needed.
Thank you, Dr. Newton. The parties to this case are entitled to an impartial board. Any council member, including the mayor, may not participate in the evidentiary hearing if he or she has a fixed opinion about this matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, close relationship with the affected persons. Does any member of this board have any partiality to disclose or a recusal to offer because of those circumstances? Okay. In the event there was a recusal, which there is not, it is the policy of this board that the recused member should step down from the dais, have a seat in the general public. Since this is not the case, the parties to this case have rights for an ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about the case that has taken place outside of this hearing. That may include site visits as well as conversations with parties, staff, or general public. Does any member of the board have any site visits or communications to disclose? And we'll say that one of the members reached out with a question, which I directed to the clerk to sign up to speak tonight. And so I think they did make their connection and had to disclose that. Ma'am?
I did receive a phone call from a member of the community regarding one of the items. I did also refer that member of the I explained to that member of the community that we are not permitted to receive any information regarding special use permits, and as such that they would need to attend the meeting in order for their evidence to be heard. But I did receive a phone call, and in addition to that phone call, that member of the community sent me a very lengthy text, and so I would like to disclose that information. I was also notified by that individual that they have reached out to two other members of council.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Well, Councilman Hare?
Well, Mayor, if that's the case, I also have received emails, which we normally do. I don't think I have made any responses to any email responses to those that emailed me. But that's a norm. But I did receive some emails concerning the issue.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Dawkins?
And same with me. I got one email on one item, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Council, thank you, Councilmember Waddell. Thank you, council members. These are new disclosures, so we thank you for bearing with us. Madam Attorney, did we handle this to your liking from a legal perspective? All right. Thank you. All right, Dr. Newton.
So as we move into the next part, that is the overview for all three of the items. Now there's going to be a process where each case is being heard. I will read the first one just so you hear it, and Mayor Colvin, if you don't mind doing it on the other two. The first case that you have, the property is located at 1805 Bragg Boulevard. City Council will listen to all testimony before asking specific questions to clarify the evidence presented. The final action will be based on the sufficiency of the standards being met. A simple majority of the City Council is required for the final vote to approve with conditions, remand the application back to the Zoning Commission for further consideration, or to deny. This is not a public hearing of City Council administrative actions, but an evidentiary hearing of a quasi-judicial nature. As such written comments regarding the case that were submitted before this meeting will be considered by the City Council only when submitted as evidence in the hearing. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you to run item 6 and after. And with the staff will proceed with this case.
Yes, please proceed with the case overview and explanation of the specific special use being addressed by the applicant. Mr. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Okay. The first case we have before you tonight is, again, 1805 Bragg Boulevard. Our applicant is Mr. Rodney Davis of Davis Builders. The owner is Miss Mary Ann Capps. This is a special use permit request to build a two-family dwelling, or what's more commonly known as a duplex, on a 2.22 acre piece of property. This is in District 5, and both staff and Zoning Commission have recommended approval. Just to give you an idea of where the property is located, This is here on the south side of Bragg Boulevard, right near the intersection with Pilot Avenue. Masrick Park is kind of just off the screen here to the north, so that kind of gives you an idea of the area there along Bragg Boulevard where this is located. Zoning, this is zoned SF6, and that is the reason for the special use permit request. Duplexes up to 4 family dwellings require special use in the SF6 district. Under our land use plan, it does call for medium density residential on this property. Duplex would qualify as a medium density residential use. The house there was a house on this property that's already been demolished. This is what the property currently looks like. If you're facing this property from Bragg Boulevard, the property to the right there at the corner of Bragg and Pilot is owned by the same lady who owns this lot. And then these are some of the surrounding houses as well, typical of that section of Bragg Boulevard. Just to give you an idea, this is a site sketch of what the applicant looks to do. He's is proposing a circular drive coming in off of Bragg Boulevard, parking in the front and exiting on the opposite side. Again, for a duplex, you can see it's about the same size as the existing house that the owner owns right now. Just give you an idea of what they're looking to build. These are the front and rear elevations that are proposed for this project, and staff has recommended that this be conditioned in so that they do have to build what they're actually proposing to you. Should the applicant provide the appropriate evidence that aligns with earlier documentation, the Zoning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval of the proposed SUP, and that's based on the proposed SUP implements policies adopted in the UDO, or Unified Development Ordinance. The development of this use is allowed in single family 6 and will not detract from the overall area. The proposed SUP ensures that new developments compatible with current zoning, UDO, and overall growth pattern of the area. The attached site plans and elevation and other evidence provided by the developer and conditions recommended by staff, and that there are no other factors which would substantially affect public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. If you would, please hold any questions you might have for staff till after your public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. This time, Madam Clerk, do I need to open this public hearing?
Yes, sir. We just have one speaker for this item.
All right, so I'll open it. All right.
Oh, okay, sorry. Mr. Ronnie Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council.
How are you, sir? Mr. Davis, for the record, can you please state your name and address and your relation to this case? And then also, as you're providing your testimony, if offering expert testimony, please share supporting information to qualify your statements.
My name is Rodney Davis. I'm owner of R.E. Davis Builders. I've been doing construction for 35 years. I'm representing the owner of this property. There was a fire that destroyed the house back in December, demolished the house, basically where the footprint was of the house. They expressed interest in rebuilding maybe a duplex that would fit into the same footprint of the existing house, what it was, which I found, and I've talked with DOT, PWC, zoning, inspections, to make sure that everything that I was presenting to them would be acceptable to rebuild in that area, and they said everything was fine, just pending on approval.
Thanks, sir.
That it.
All right, thank you.
May we have no further speakers?
All right, so with that, we'll close the public hearing. The party's testimony. Okay, so council, we have heard from staff presentation, we've heard the sworn testimony. I'll go to Councilman Dawkins, I think, had his light.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion if it pleases the council.
I do have one question, Councilman Dawkins. Let me catch Councilman Hare, and then I'll come right back. Yeah. Councilman Hare?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Who was speaking? Mr. Harmon, come back up a moment, please. Let me make sure I'm understanding, because I was trying to find those factors. There was a factor that was just given. I think you may have stated it, that it needed to be added that the submitted design and drawing had to be, does that have to be a part of the findings or the factors? Because I didn't see it in here. So is that something that if a motion is made, that particular statement has to be stated?
It is in your packet as part of the, as part of your motion.
Which number is that? Because I'm looking through them now.
Let's see. It's in by reference in the packet, and it's at.
Yeah, because I went through the number. That's what I was looking at, the numbers in the alphabets, and I
Yeah.
didn't.
There is it's under staff recommendation, Councilman Harrell. Approval is based on the submitted site plan and associated building elevations. I think what he was saying, you can make it a condition, is that?
Yeah, we recommend that
Well,
that
yeah.
just be a condition of approval. That way you know that what they're
Well,
telling
that
you
was-
tonight is
Yeah.
what's going to be built there.
That was my
Yeah.
concern, but you say that it's referenced there?
It is on, looks like page 3 of your report.
3?
Yep, just above where it starts the findings of fact. Kind of basically right in the very middle of
Yeah.
that page.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. All right, thank you, sir. Thanks, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Kinston, you had a question, or are you voting?
My question's already been answered. I'm
Okay,
ready to vote.
thank you, ma'am. Councilman Dawkins?
Mr. Mayor, if it pleases the council, I'm ready to make a motion. Motion to approve, based on staff recommendation approval, zoning commission approval, medium density zoning residential, and the 8 findings of fact. My motion is to approve the special use permit.
All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Dawkins to approve. There was a second by Councilmember Wright. Any discussion? You're voting? Quick on the trigger, huh? All right, council, any discussion? If not, I'll look to you for your votes on the motion to approve. Councilman Davis and Waddell?
Green.
Councilman Davis?
Green.
Green. All right. All right, Madam Clerk, it's unanimous. Motion carries. Item 8.02. Dr. Newton.
Similarly, you've heard the instructions that were given at the beginning. We'll follow this general script. I do know that you had received communication from the city attorney concerning the next 2 items and a potential conversation as to whether or not they were going to be heard. So depending on how you handle that, we will have the next case. The next case that is currently scheduled is 802, which is at 440 McPhee Drive. Council will listen to the testimony being asked and specific questions to clarify the presented evidence. The final action will be based on the sufficiency of the standards being met. Simple majority vote of the City Council is required for the final vote to approve with conditions, remand the application back to the Zoning Commission for further consideration or deny. It's not a public hearing. of city council administrative actions, but an evidentiary hearing of a quasi-judicial nature. As such, any written comments regarding the case that were submitted before the meeting will be considered by the council only when submitted as evidence of the hearing. I will turn it to your pleasure as to the disposition of how you want to handle the earlier request that came in from the city attorney, and depending on that, staff is ready to proceed.
Yeah, I think she shared it,
City
so,
attorney shared the information.
okay, thank you. So, Councilor Wade, item 8.02, I'm not sure, I may need to pull back up that email. Was the email reference to the last two items or the last item? Last two, okay. Scenarios? All right, so, okay. So, Councilman Hare?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Let me make sure I'm understanding. So I do have an opportunity now that I can speak on 8.03.
Well, before we get into that, I guess the question, the fundamental question is, per the communication, there was a proposal as if, for the council to decide whether or not to hear this tonight or to delay it. If we get into the merits of it, then we'll need to follow the procedure that we followed for the last.
And if that's the case, Mayor, I would like to, as far as item 8.03, request that we give.
Well, we gotta, yeah, so council, let me re-clarify. We've got a lot of different things going on tonight. So 8.02 and 3, the proposal was, according to the communication, that if the council, just for the, okay. So we'll start with 8.02. So this is a matter of if we want to proceed with the hearing of the evidentiary part of the discussion tonight or not. And so unless there's a motion to table this, then I will work to proceed toward the process. All right, council, I'll look to you. All right, I just re-cleared the board. If you have something to add or a motion, Councilmember Ingram.
Yeah, so Mayor, am I understanding correctly that if we get into the details of this, a hearing is needed, a public hearing is needed?
So Mayor, if I could,
Yeah.
please.
Thank you.
And Mr. Newton will also go to the mic, and we will tag team
Well, you know,
this
my law
item.
degree ends at 9 o'clock, so you have to kick
So I think it would probably be easier so that everyone is clear. 8.02 is P-20-07F, a request for a special use permit to allow a duplex to be located in a single-family 10 SF10 zoning district located at 440 McPhee Drive, tax parcel number 0427-33-9125, containing 0.38 acres, being the property of Patrick Gibney, Sandy Mount Properties. That is the hearing item that we are on, and there has been a request by those in opposition to delay the hearing of this matter tonight. It is my recommendation and opinion that the council take up whether you will go forward with the hearing. Once that is decided, then that will determine the next steps.
And since we're tagging in and out, I'll tag in. That the evidentiary hearing is the opportunity for the information to be officially received. Anything prior to the hearing is not officially a part of the record, as you've heard in the instructions. So anything that happened up until the decision to have that hearing is not yet in and being considered. So that's why it becomes an issue, and that's why we're going back and forth. And it also is important to know that the applicant, in each case, probably, well, they are here, and they may wish to say something about those items.
All right, council.
Okay.
So before you is a proposal as to whether you would like to continue this item or you want to hear it tonight. All right. All right. All right. Sounds like we're continuing. So guess I'll need to open up the public hearing and.
interest is to continue the hearing from tonight.
No. He said to proceed. There was no action on continuation. So,
Mr. Mayor, I can't hear the city attorney.
yeah, she's got her mask and social
I'm sorry,
distancing.
I didn't have my microphone on either. So as I understand it, Mayor, council will be proceeding with this public hearing tonight.
That is correct.
Mr. Harmon will now present the staff report.
Mr. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council again. This is, again, case P2007F. The applicant is Mr. Delbert Saucer, Critical Path Solutions. The owner, again, is Patrick Gibney, Sandy Mount Properties. The request is to allow a duplex to be located in a single-family 10 SF10 zoning district located at 440 McPhee Drive. The acreage is 0.38 acres. This is in District 5. Staff had recommended approval and zoning commission denial 4-1. Just to give you an idea of where this is located, over kind of in the left-hand corner of this photo here, almost off of the photo, is the Harris Teeter Shopping Center. And so that kind of gives you an idea of where we're looking at. These are county office buildings here. I can't remember the name of the elementary school, I believe it is. It sits right here. Yeah. Is Max Abbott? Okay. And so we're looking here on McPhee Drive. It's the highlighted property. Current zoning is SF10. It's the last SF10 property. It borders SF6, but both of those districts would allow for duplexes through a special use permit process. The land use plan calls for medium density residential through this area. A duplex would be considered medium density residential. This is a current photo of the property. There is some damage to the home. They, of course, are looking to demolish this home to build the duplex. These are just some photos of some things in that general area. Most of the homes in that area are very similar to the one in question. Just to the north, kind of right outside of this development, is a set of apartments, and then back to the west, the county's office building there again. When this first went to the zoning commission, the applicant had a slightly different site plan that they had submitted. During that process, their site plan showed 2 garages on the front, along with parking spaces here along the front of the property. After hearing concerns from the neighborhood during that zoning commission meeting, they kind of went back to the drawing board and redesigned what the duplex would look like, and now they have where the parking and garages would be in the rear of the property. They've also, well, I'll get into that in a minute. They also have adjusted, obviously, the elevations for the property. This would now be the front elevation, where there are no garages at this point, and then the new rear elevation showing 2 garages. Again, due to the comments and concerns that were raised by the neighbors during the zoning commission meeting, the applicant did revise their plans associated with the project. Below are the major changes that they made, moving the parking spaces to the rear, garages to the rear, increasing the side yard setbacks from 10 to 15 feet, increasing the front yard setback from 30 to 35 feet, and the front facade of both the new and old would be the same distance from McPhee Drive. If you would, please hold any comments or questions of staff till after your public hearing.
Good, sir. All right. All right, Madam Clerk, we'll open up the public hearing. Please call your first speaker.
Our first speaker is Julianne Harrelson.
Hello, Ms. Harrison. Please state your name and address and your relationship to the case.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and ladies and gentlemen of the City Council. My name's Julianne Harrelson. I work for
Come up to the mic, sir.
Can you come up to that? Okay.
Okay.
There you go. All right.
My name is Julianne Harrelson. I work for Critical Path Solutions, which is the design build contractor that will be building this duplex if this is approved. My address is 109 Gillespie Street. Fayetteville is our office address. I'm going to speak in favor of the Sandy Mountain duplex, and I'm going to speak to you briefly about how this project complies with the applicable standards of Section 30-4-C, the use-specific standards. First of all, in the table, the use table, it allows 2 to 4 family dwellings in the special use SF10. So it is allowable as a special use. Within the specific standards, item number 2, dwelling 2 to 4 family, item A, it says except for circular driveways, no 2 to 4 family dwelling lot shall be served by more than one driveway on the same block face. We have one driveway off of McPhee in this site plan that we have. B, 2 to 4 family dwellings on lots in the SF10 district shall be served by a single entrance on any individual building facade. As stated, we have one drive. Ground-based, roof-based, wall-mounted electrical equipment, HVAC equipment, and other utility connection devices shall be gained and screened or located outside of the view from any adjacent public street. Electric meters and our HVAC units will either be screened from view or located at the rear of the duplex once we have coordinated with PwC. D, 2 to 4 family dwellings shall be configured to appear as single-family homes and shall comply with Section 30-5G single-family design standards. We selected a plan that we felt, to the best degree possible, resembled a single-family residence. In doing so, the materials that we're planning to use are similar to those on the homes in that neighborhood. We're planning to use brick and vinyl siding. The size of this plan, the heated first floor space is 1,140 square feet. And I know one of the concerns of the neighbors was that this was going to be big. In their opposition, I think it states that the typical home size is 1,000 to 1,500 feet, so our first floor footprint fits within what is typical for this neighborhood. I know that height was another concern for this project, and I also know that one of the concerns was that it was built on a slab on grade. Building it on a slab instead of a crawl space is actually going to bring this 2-story project down in height slightly. And I don't know if you saw on the elevations that we presented, there are 2 sections of the house on the front that have a low roof on them. So it breaks up the elevation on the front of the house and brings it back down to a more pedestrian scale. In the last item, it says that we must comply with Section 30-5G single-family design standards. So if we look at those, the first thing in there is purpose. We are investing in the city's future by replacing an older home in disrepair with a well-designed, distinctive, and modern duplex design. This will protect and enhance the property values of that neighborhood. In the future, if there are appraisals done in this neighborhood, this duplex will value considerably more than the existing home that is on the property. B, the design is a two-story building, but it is in similar appearance of a two-story home that was just completed one street over at 416 McBain. So it is similar to structures that are in the existing community. The human scale aspect is similar to those homes in the neighborhood in several respects and fosters a similar pedestrian environment. If you remember, I stated on the elevations that we have the two lower roofs on the front of the building that bring the scale of the building down, even though it is two-story. And also, as Craig Harmon mentioned, our building is not any wider than, it's only a couple of feet wider than the existing house that was there, and the face of the building is in the same plane as the existing house. So we're not any closer to the street, we're not really any larger in our presence as we face the street. Item C, we are reinforcing the attributes of the surrounding single-family homes with the use of similar materials and design elements, including the lower roof on the front facade, shutters, gables. We move the garage around to the rear, and we have a porch. Design standards for the single-family building orientation. The dwelling's primary entrance faces the street, which is a requirement. And roof projections. All roof vents, pipes, antennas, satellite dishes, and other penetrations will be located on the rear as required. There were a few things in the multifamily design standards that we tried to adhere to, just to mention those. Building orientation and articulation. We've oriented the facade so that it's street facing, which is desirable. We moved the parking to the rear to comply with the neighbor concerns and also listed as a desirable quality in the design standards. The building facade, we have offsets of at least 2 feet, and that's to give the front of the building character as desired in the UDO. Our facade includes covered porch, recessed entrances, eaves with a minimum 6-inch projection, multiple windows which have at least a minimum 4-inch wide trim, and a center post on the porch. And all of these items are things that you would see on a single-family residence. The last item is our roof pitch is greater than 3 and 12, and we have some street-facing gables on the facade to give the front elevation curb appeal, and again, to help with the scale. So we've tried really hard to pick out a duplex plan and elevation that fits in with the surroundings of the neighborhood. And that's all that I have.
Thank you so much. Madam Clerk?
Mayor, our next speaker is Mr. Delbert Susia.
How many speakers for this case?
5.
Oh.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm speaking on behalf of the owner as well. My name is Delbert Saucier. I'm with Critical Path Solutions. And some of what I had prepared in the slideshow presentation may be a little bit redundant based on Julianne's extensive explanation. So I'll try to skip through the best I can to make sure that this gets over quickly, because I'm sure all of us want to get home. The 440 McPhee facility, of course, we have designed, or Julianne has put together to kind of mimic the surrounding areas. So I know some of the spaces, there are questions, if I could skip through. It's kind of, there we go. So compatibility with the character of the surrounding property. As you can see, the image of the Sandy Mount duplex. There's quite a few of the homes with the vinyl siding, brick veneer, and we tried to match that. Here's another example of a home with a street-facing garage. At this point, we have converted this plan to make the garages on the back side based on recommendations required by some of the local neighbors. But this is also a vinyl siding home within the area.
Not to interrupt, but if you would just tell me when you're ready for the next.
I'll slide. How's that? Slide. Sorry. Again, here's another home in the area with the vinyl siding, slide. An additional home with vinyl siding, brick veneer, similar to what we're doing, slide. Here's a list of all the homes on the streets that we kind of touched base on, which are basically vinyl siding and brick. Again, just trying to make sure that we stayed within the confines of the rest of the facilities or residences on this neighborhood, slide. Comparable to another duplex, I know there was a question of whether or not there's a duplex, and I'm not sure this duplex was built by city requirements, but the house located on 451 McBain is actually a duplex, whether it was built at once or separate, where they have two separate drives and as well two separate house numbers on the outside of those houses. And this is just one street over from the McPhee lot. Slide. Here's another angle of the duplexes. You can see the two separate drives, the two separate parkings, and the two separate entrances on this duplex. Again, one street over from McPhee. Slide. Compatibility with character summarized. Slide. The new proposed duplex will blend in and match the existing houses within the neighborhood utilizing the following. Slide. Again, vinyl siding. Many houses in the neighborhood have vinyl siding. Slide. Brick veneer, most of them have just either front-facing brick veneer or some just a wainscot up. We're matching that. Slide. And again, some of them used a cultured stone, which we have looked at and considered, but I think the owner is going to stick with brick veneer just because of the amount of houses in the neighborhood that have brick veneer. Slide. Special use avoids a significant adverse impact on surrounding lands. Slide. The service and delivery and parking, loading, odor, noise, glare, and vibration will be 0 to none other than the standard residential deliveries. And kids playing day to day, just a standard, it's a residential. Slide. Individual trash cans will be provided for each family, so there will be not any additional noises from dumpster pickup that you see sometimes in a lot of duplex and multifamily, where they'll have one community dumpster for everyone to put their trash in. Each family will have their own trash can that'll be dragged down on the street for pickup, so we won't have the loud dumpster truck noises in that area. Slide. And there'll be no deliveries, loading noises, glare, or vibrations that you would be associated with everyday activities other than the standard residential living. So it's not a commercial project. It's not a big, larger apartment building. It's just a standard residential duplex. Slide. And again, the characteristics of the proposed duplex are matching the existing exterior color finishes of adjacent homes, vinyl siding, brick, stone, or typical window arrangements. Additional glare or disruptions will not increase beyond the existing residence. So it's not a large duplex with multiple windows that are increasing glare from the sun onto neighboring houses. Slide. The special use is configured to minimize adverse effects, including visual impacts on proposed use on adjacent lands. Slide. As you can see, the duplex is a two-story building that there was concerns of. They just finished a two-story home with a front-facing garage on McBain. A lot of the finishes are the same, brick veneer on the front, vinyl siding on the sides and backs, and we plan to continue with that same type of look. Slide. As you can see here, there's multiple houses in the neighborhood with garages inside of them. You've got 449 McPhee and 443 McPhee. All these homes have garages on the front. Slide. The special use avoids significant deterioration of water and air resources, wildlife habitat, scenic resources, and natural resources. This is probably the most critical one for our area. Slide. This special use avoids significant deterioration by using a previously developed lot instead of developing a new green field. Slide. The natural grade of the site slopes back to the street, from the street to the rear of the property to an already established storm drainage easement. So the water from the site is automatically rolling back where it's supposed to go. In comparison to neighboring homes in the area, the duplex structure, driveway, and parking will leave more pervious surface for positive draining onto the site than existing homes sitting on much smaller lots. Slide. The existing size of 440 McPhee, is 16,552 or 0.38 acres within its boundary. The proposed duplex is set at a total of 2554, which puts the first floor footprint at 1,670 square feet. Slide. The existing lots within the neighborhood average 8,000 to 9,000 square foot in size, with home footprints of 1,000 to 1,500. Slide. So the proposed duplex may be 60% larger than the average home, but the footprint is considerably the same size as most homes in that area, but with a lot size of 60% larger than most lots in that area. So the special use maintains safe ingress and egress onto the site. A driveway into the property allows for the vehicles to be in the back, preventing multiple cars littering the front and side yards. As you can see, the driveway from the back also allows cars to enter the street forward, which is much safer than backing into a heavy thoroughfare. And I don't know if any of you guys have driven up through McPhee on the way shortcut down to Rayford Road or Robeson, but it's a constant thoroughfare from Haymount. With this driveway, it allows cars to pull out onto the street rather than backing blindly into that street. Here you can see where other yards in the neighborhood are littered with vehicles. This property will maintain a parking in the back to hide the additional parking. Slide, 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 slide. So the special use allows for the protection of property values and ability of neighborhood lands to develop the uses permitting in the zoning district. Slide. New construction and growth that accents and revitalizes older homes and neighborhoods will have no adverse effect on existing property values. Slide. And most appraisal values of homes and neighborhoods are based on area amenities and town-city developments. The construction of the duplex will have no adverse effect on the property value because the assumption of exterior finishes, compatibility, encroachment, deterioration, and safe road conditions that we are presenting are within the requirements of the city in this special use permit. So those arguments have no findings of fact of not being able to approve the special use. And I think Julianne touched on the rest of this, but we all know where property values are gained and reduced from, and it's our community, and our community is growing, so there's no reason why the property values in this area won't grow as well with new construction in the area. Special use complies with relevant city and state and federal laws and regulations. In the initial TRC review for the city, no major comments or concern were documented for the submission of the duplex. As the City of Fayetteville Inspection Department performs a thorough review of all documents submitted for permitting, all required changes will be made to comply. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, our next speaker is Mr. Patrick Gibney.
Hello, sir.
Hello, how you doing, Mayor? Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. I came down here today just to
please state your name and address and your relationship to the...
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Patrick Gibney, and this is my property that we're trying to develop on McPhee Drive. And I acquired it about a year ago, and the gentleman that lived there died, and I was lucky enough to be offered it by the family, and I thought it was a beautiful opportunity, so I took it. I came down here today just to explain my intentions, because I know that there's some neighbors that have some concerns, and I certainly don't want to not get along with my neighbors. I have another home on McPhee, 466 McPhee, that I use as an office, as a place to sleep because my business is at the end of McPhee Drive. So I do a lot, I basically live and work in the area. I got a vested interest in the area, and I want to get along with my neighbors. We applied to build, and when I saw this place, it's a huge lot. You can't tell from the road. There's a little house, and behind it, you could fit 4 more houses back there. And I saw it, and I thought, my God, I wonder, can I do this? I'm not a builder. So I called Del and Julianne, who I'd worked with before when our business burned down a few years ago. We had to rebuild. It was Del's company that rebuilt it for me. So I called them. They came down and said, yeah, you could do something really great here. When I saw the artist rendition of what was possible, it was beautiful. I thought maybe I will be a builder. I'll try. So we submitted to get permission to do so. I was approached in February out of the blue by a neighbor who came up and said, hey, Irishman, you lost. And I said, I lost what? He said, you lost. They turned you down. You can't get no planning. And that was when I found out there was a planning meeting or something in February that I didn't even know had happened. And I thought he was joking. No, he was serious. So I called Del and Julianne, and they said we hadn't received no notification, an email, written, or anything. I believe it turned out it was just a snafu. It was nothing nefarious. It got worked out, and we're here today, so all's well that ends well. But we wanted to be heard. This property was never going to face the street. It was never going to have crammed garages in. It was never going to be that way. I figured when any reasonable person saw what we were trying to do, you'd be like, man, that's beautiful and great for the area. So again, I wanted to come down here and explain that today, that whatever we have to do to work out with the neighbors, I'm willing to do whatever I have to do. And particularly since in the area, there's a duplex right across the road, that they just built in McBain. It's about 100 yards as the crow flies, And there's several other properties in the area being used as duplexes with multi-rental things going on and cars all over the road and all of that. We're doing nothing like that. We're doing a beautiful, clean area with garages in the back and parking. It's going to be beautiful. I wouldn't be part of it otherwise. Let me see here. That's essentially it. I just wanted to say that I'm willing to do whatever to work with the neighbors to address their concerns. I surrounded myself with professional people to advise me on the right, correct, proper way to do this, and that's what we're trying to do. So I hope that you will agree and approve our special use permit. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you, sir.
Our next speaker is Ms. Nancy McCleary.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Can you see me?
Yes.
My name is Nancy McCleary. I live at 435 McPhee Drive, which is diagonally across the street from the property at 440 McPhee. I am opposed to the special use permit. First thing I would like to say is that the plans have been revised since the first planning meeting. We were not aware of that until today, that the garages had changed. This is something new. We have not had a chance to review the plan. I also have submitted, and I'm assuming that Mr. Harmon saw that council got a copy of it. It's a formal, it's a statement of opposition, and it was prepared by my sister, Carol Crutchfield Carter, and she is a planning consultant and a member of the Greensboro Planning Board. So I asked her to help me with this. And what we have put forth here is, I think, some very well-formed arguments. I'm not going to sit here and read the whole document. I probably should, but at this point, a lot of it is somewhat moot, given that the plans were changed without our knowledge. I would say that the portrait that has been painted here of the duplex houses and the cars junked in the yards, regardless of what you saw, that is not in the area where this property is located. The new house that they keep referring to is over on McBain. It's not in our area right there. It's a street over, and it's up at the top of the hill. And there are no two-story houses that are prominent in our end of McPhee Drive. Also, I would like to say that another concern that we have had was traffic. I don't know that it will matter as much now, given that the plans were changed. But that is a very heavily traveled area. That's why there are 2 speed bumps on McPhee Drive, because we've had problems with people coming down the street, and there's a very sharp curve right around the corner of my house. And there's a flashing light out in front of my house, and the 2 speed bumps were designed to slow people down because they fly up and down that street. And our concern would be having additional traffic, especially given also at Brigadoon Lane and McPhee Drive. I can sit and watch from my living room, and nobody ever stops at that stop sign. I know he has said about having the driveway in the back so that people would pull out. If you do decide to grant this special use permit, that's heartening, because at least you won't have people backing out in the street around that curve. I can't back out of my driveway. My neighbor can't back out of her driveway, so we both pull out of my driveway. The houses were built in the 1950s, and most of them are brick. There may be some that have some veneer, some vinyl siding. I think my house was one that he spoke to about having the rock facade there beside the door. Those houses are as sturdy and durable as any house you'll ever find. I would contend that the property values of our homes will continue to hold steady because they are durable. And the duplex and the new construction of things, I would be very, I would prefer to know specifically what is going to be built. On this document that my sister prepared, it has a picture of the original submission for what it would look like with the front driveway and the garages on the front, which have now been moved to the back. But as Mr. Gibney was describing it, this is not what he was describing that was submitted originally, does not fit this criteria. So therefore, I would like to say, I hope you will read the opposition statement that was prepared. As I said, I could stand here and read it for you, but I think you're capable of reading it yourselves. Again, I was the one, Duncan Hubbard and I were the ones who asked for the continuance because we were not aware of the change in plans until this morning. No one had made us aware of that. So I would hope that you will consider these factors. I hope you will hear us, and I hope that you will make a decision that you believe is best for the community and for our neighborhood. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mayor, our final speaker for this item is Mr. Duncan Hubbard.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Pro Tem, City Council staff. Thanks for allowing us to come in and talk tonight. My name is Duncan Hubbard. I'm here tonight with my wife. We've lived at 438 McPhee Drive since 1991. My home is directly beside this house at 440. If you're looking at the house, I'm to the right. I'm at the corner of McPhee and Brigadoon Lane. February 11th, 2020, numerous members of our community met with folks here in City Hall to discuss special use permit P2007F. We presented numerous facts and evidence concerning the property at 440 McPhee Drive and the impact that it would have on our properties within the notification and surrounding areas of the specified special use permit. After the facts were reviewed, the findings were reviewed, the Zoning Commission voted 4-1 to deny this special use. The applicant of the special use did not appear in the Zoning Commission, as you heard tonight, nor did he agree to talk to any of the neighbors in the area regarding his proposed submission for the special use. I learned of a site plan this morning at approximately 10 a.m. when I talked to Mr. Harmon on the telephone. As I looked at the newly designed property, basically what I see is I see a new construction that's basically been turned 180 degrees. The front of the home is now the rear of the home is now the front, and there have been some slight modifications that have been made. But if you look at the original documentation and you look at his documentation submitted now, you'll see that it's basically just a reversal. Currently, the home that sits on that property is roughly 954 square foot and includes an open carport. In your packet that you have this evening, the newly proposed property was stated at roughly 1,100 square feet per unit is what I heard, but in your documentation, it clearly states it's just shy of 3,000 square feet. This is like taking the extreme home makeover and putting it on McPhee Drive. This property may support that type home, but it is an extremely large home that'll be going on this property. Several things that I'd like to point out to you that are factual. The properties on McPhee Drive, as you've already heard, in Highland Village are all single occupancy and single family dwellings. Note I said on McPhee Drive. There are properties behind McPhee on Brigadoon Lane that consist of Winding Creek condos and apartments. Those are in fact based differently in the zoning, as you all have heard. However, these homes that were built roughly 50 years ago, and nearly every home in the neighborhood does have a brick veneer like you've heard. Each one of these houses are single story like you've heard, and most of the homes are very similar in square footage, again like you've heard, 1,000 square foot to 1,500 square foot. We are seeing homes in the area being renovated and not necessarily torn down. The house on McBain that has been newly constructed burned roughly 5 years ago. The property remained vacant until someone decided to do something. The property at 440 McPhee Drive, which is where the special use is, was built approximately 1954. As it stands, again, it's roughly 954 square foot. It has 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a carport. The property has been vacant for nearly 2 years. The owner did die in roughly June of 2018. His family, which was out of state, had to handle the physical estate, which took time. They had to travel both in-state and out. The property has remained vacant since his death, and has not been maintained in any shape, form, or fashion. The property was listed for sale by a real estate agent. Apparently, this was a privately listed listing, as there were never any signs posted, and neighbors were not aware that the home was listed for sale. I learned that the property sold very quickly for a mere $33,000 in September of 2019. The current property was purchased again in September of 2019, and since this date and time, the current owner has done absolutely nothing to maintain the yard, to do anything for our neighborhood, to enhance the neighborhood in any shape, form, or fashion during this time period. I clearly understand that our initial hearing was in February. It was with the Zoning Commission. Again, he did not appear for that, but it would seem interest to me that if he was very interested in this property, that he would have made the efforts to do this. He would have made the efforts to have maintained the yard. The grass at one point in time got knee-high. There are several critical things that I do need you to understand. I heard a little while ago that the water would run off onto the rear into some form of catch basin, some form of property runoff. What is behind our homes is a PWC utility easement. There is no storm drainage. The property directly behind my property is owned by Cumberland County. It's been for sale for many years. It cannot be built on because of the amount of water. McPhee Drive is a steep hill from Rayford Road to the bottom of McPhee. It ties in later on with McBain and ties into Pinecrest Drive. Due to this, all the water runoff from all neighboring homes come downhill. I live on the corner. All that water comes out through my yard. I have spent thousands of dollars putting in French drains, putting in a retaining wall. I have a nice property. My property is currently fine with the water runoff. If you take this home and you take the estimated driveway that is proposed, based upon the map that I saw today, I'm estimating that the driveway will be roughly 140 to 150 feet in length from front to rear. Please note that there's a 24 by 24 storage building or access building that is in the back of this property. This property is located on a hill that goes down, and although the home will be built on a slab, water runoff has to go somewhere. So where does it go? Does it come to my house, which is downhill, or does it go to the back? If it goes to the back, it's likely to do what it's done many times before, and that's each time we have heavy rain, water from Mirror Lake, water from surrounding areas of which McPhee Drive and Highland Village has absolutely no no storm drains. We have curb, but there are no storm drains. All of this water draws and flows to the lowest peak of the road. That is between Brigadoon Lane and Winding Creek Apartments. Folks in Winding Creek Apartments have been flooded on many occasions. So now we're going to take even more stormwater, which is not controlled by the city of Fayetteville on a residential application, and we're going to put that water somewhere. It's stated under the surrounding development that while the family housing is most prevalent on McPhee Drive along to the north in Brigadoon along Winding Creek Road, there's a large apartment complex which I mentioned. That is multi-housing, that is multifamily. The property, however, that we're discussing is in a residential area. Under the staff recommendations and conditions, it's stated that under item number 2, this is a residential community and the plan to keep and fill the single-family development is what's needed. Item number 3 says this duplex should bring no adverse impact to the community. Item number 6 says a driveway into this site is similar to those at each house of the neighborhood. Because of the arrangement of parking, cars will, it's what's in your packet, cars will always pull onto the street and will not be backing into the roadway. McPhee Drive is a heavily traveled road. We did have speed humps put in. We've had numerous accidents in the sharp curve. We've had cars drive through a home on Christmas morning of 1992. I ask tonight that you support your zoning commission in the fact that they denied this special use, and I ask for your vote to continue to deny this special use, to put a duplex in a residential neighborhood, in a neighborhood that's established, and in a neighborhood that folks simply have voiced their concern that we do not want a duplex in the neighborhood. Again, we've got the apartments and condos behind us. Those can be a lot less of a financial impact if you'd like to buy one. They're a lot less money than this is probably going to cost. And I ask that you look at these values that we've pointed out to support the fact that your zoning commission denied this 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I forgot to ask, did you have any evidentiary evidence that you were submitting that supported any of that? I forgot to ask you on the beginning.
Nothing other than the fact that your packet says that this is a 3,000 square foot or just shy of 3,000 square foot, and I've heard 1,100, I've heard 2,200, I've heard 2,400. I think there's a lot of uncertainty here.
Okay.
Again, we learned that the site plan had changed this morning, but it's your voice. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, Madam Clerk.
No, we have no further speakers.
All right, so we'll close public hearing on that. I did have one question, Councilmember Kinston.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the questions that I had was on page 5 of 8, Item 8, it did say that the zoning commission voted 4-1 in recommending denial. But based on the changes, out of the 9 concerns, it looks like all of them were addressed except for 3. One of the questions that I had, and I wanted to get some additional information on, one of the items that was listed, number 3, was flooding issues in the area. If there's any additional comments that you can provide about the flooding issue in the area?
I can step out for just a second and ask that we look at the script again, that we are in spot 9, where you would be asking if any mayor of the council has any questions of the applicant or the witnesses, believe the size of the standing, have opportunity to cross-examine, because they will still have an opportunity to cross-examine each other from statements that have been made and have a closing statement. And then, based off of that, we can get into deliberations. And that would be a perfect time in the deliberations to be able to answer that question, because what you are now hearing, stepping aside from the script, what you are now hearing is, remember that prima facie, the applicant, you heard him go through all 8 points. They automatically essentially get that to their credit. You then hear credible evidence. You listen to that evidence, you look at those same 8 conditions, and you heard from Councilmember Kinston asking a question, I think it's on number 3. That then becomes something that you have to weigh and see whose evidence you wish. The attorney will probably guide you through that a little bit more, but if we can continue to give them the opportunity to have their cross-examination and or closing statement, as we have on that 3rd page, that allows you to hear the full testimony and hear the last statements back and forth.
So,
Mayor, if I understood,
Page 3.
please.
Councilmember Kinston was asking staff if we had any additional information as it related to the flooding.
Correct. Was that your question, Councilmember?
Yes.
And what were you saying, Madam Attorney?
Until they do their rebuttal and back and forth?
My understanding is that all the testimony from the parties has been presented, and now council either has questions.
For them or staff?
That's correct.
Right, and this was for staff, so I'm not sure it was,
Okay, all right, I will go with that.
Okay.
Off script, that question would be directed to the applicant if they have additional information regarding flooding on that. That is not information that we are prepared to, and we are not providing evidence. We're trying not to provide evidence. We're letting the applicant present the information.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay?
So would the applicant step to the mic for me, please?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So my question is, the commission originally denied 4-1. One of the conditions was number 3, which is flooding in the area. With the changes that have been made, I did not see that one listed of anything addressed with the flooding. So is there any additional information that you can provide?
I have no additional information as far as the flooding is concerned, other than I do know that the city has done a lot of work at the creek at the bottom, at the base of McPhee, where it comes in. Over the last few years, they have, have done work on that, as well as the dam up and around the corner in Haymount and the roadway through there to address the water situation. I mean, of course, I have no control. The homeowner, the landowners, no one in that area have control over what Mother Nature is going to do. But, if the property itself is 0.3 acres and there's currently, we'll say, a 900 square foot house with a 250 square foot carport and a 75 square foot shed in the back, we're well over 1,300 square foot existing on the property. The footprint of the new house that's going in place of the duplex is only 1,600. The property may be 2,400 total, but it's 1,600 of pervious surface. So we're only adding a couple hundred more square foot of pervious surface to that area. That is not going to help or prevent or increase any type of flooding in that area. Again, this is not at the bottom of the hill on McPhee. This is somewhat in the middle of the hill. Water is going to roll downhill when it comes up. They have worked on the creek. I know of that much. I've seen that over time passing through the area. as well as the dam up and around the corner with the bridge that was taken out during Matthew. They have repaired that. I mean, aside from putting in additional storm drainage measures to make sure that the property from the roof, which is the area where water collects, is drained to the back, as Mr. Duncan had said, with French drains around the building, and as well off the gutters and downspouts that take the water to the back of the property, where it currently runs downhill and then down through the easement and into the creek that they just rebuilt. I don't see how, whether the house that's there is modified and they put an addition on the house and make it a 1,600 square foot house, or if they put a duplex on it that the footprint is 1,600 square feet, it's not going to add or take away from Mother Nature flooding that area unless proper measures are made, which they were when the city, you know, did the work on those creeks and that dam and that bridge that they had issues with in the flooding of Matthew.
Okay. And then I have one other question. The other question I have is just for everyday activity. Can you tell me where the mailboxes are? I do believe this is a neighborhood that is a walkable mail route, but can you confirm that or?
Yes, the mailboxes will be down at the edge of the street. It'll be just a small, you know, multiple mailbox, 2 mailboxes side by side. It won't be a grotesque, you know, USPS lockable box. It'll be no different than a standard box. The same thing, the people living in the area or in the duplex will walk down to the edge of the street to get their mail. When the trash day, they'll bring their trash cans down to the edge of the street just like they would in everyday houses in that area.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember Ingram.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, sir, if you could come back, please. My question is, looking at this neighborhood I know there's a lot of curves and turns, and I know this is a hilly neighborhood. In terms of elevation, this land, will it be elevated to support the housing structure?
The land is currently slightly elevated in that area to support that structure, but again, with the design, Julianne, with our design team, she has changed the foundation and the outside of the building to give it so it doesn't look as grand in that space, but it is higher up than some of the other houses in that area, but the design was put in place to contrast the rest of the houses in that space.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Wright.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the special use permit, the sub, to allow the 2 to 4 family dwelling duplexes within the single family 10 FS10 district to be built on the subject property as depicted on the attached site plans and elevations as presented by staff based on the standard of the city's development code and the evidence presented during this hearing, and that the application is consistent with the application plans because, number 1, the development is located in a single family F10 FS10 district, and 2, that its use complies with the findings listed below, and 3, the proposed permit is in the public interest because the property, the sub, does fit in the character of the area.
So there's a motion by Councilmember Wright to approve based on the specific language mentioned. There's a second by Councilmember Banks McLaughlin. Any further discussion, Councilman Dawkins?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I appreciate the hard work that Mr. Gibney has done, and Dale and Julianne, all of them, this is going to change the look of that particular area of McPhee. Some of the pictures that you saw of McBain, it does appear, I'm going to have to look at McBain because it looks like we've got some properties that are non-conforming. And that's a concern to me, but I'm going to be voting against the motion, and I think it's just going to change. It's going to change the street. I'm I'm not sure about the effect on the real estate values. So I'm obviously very concerned. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Hare, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. I heard I guess it was the builder state that the mailboxes were going to be down at the corner of the yard.
The mailboxes will be installed in compliancy with the rest of the mailboxes.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, all of the mailboxes there are at the street.
I think some of them are on the houses themselves. There are a few on the street, but we will match whatever's existing out on the site. I mean, we have to submit this package and plan and site revision to the city board for approval, and I'm sure the zoning and permitting, and they'll address those comments to what we have to do and what we can do and what we cannot do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, council, there's a motion on the floor by Councilmember Wright. There's a second by Councilmember Banks McLaughlin. Any other discussion on the motion to approve? All right, seeing none, council, I look to you for your votes. Council members Davis and Waddell?
Green.
Green.
All right. So, Madam Clerk, those voting, motion fails 5-5. Those voting in favor, Councilman Davis, Waddell, Wright, Colvin, Jensen. Those voting in opposed, Dawkins, Ingram, Hare, Kinston. Who's missing? Wait a minute, 6-4. It's getting late. All right, 6-4. Can't count the way I used to. All right, so let me get that right for the record. So motion passes 6-4. Those voting in favor, Councilman Davis, Waddell, Banks, McLaughlin, Wright, Colvin, Jensen. Those voting in opposed, Dawkins, Ingram, Hare, Kinston. Got it right. All right, you got it? All right. All right, thank you. All right, council, item 8.03.
As you heard on the last item, you have an item that was presented to you as to whether or not to hear it. So I think that's your first item of conversation. I know the applicant is also here. And depending on that, staff is ready to
Councilman Hare, I think you were offering, well, when we were originally talking about the two items, so this is an opportunity, if that is your interest, to propose the question of whether this item is heard tonight or not.
What I wanted to propose, Mayor, I wanted to propose, given an opportunity to see if both sides, the proponent side, the for side, and the against side, to see if they could come together. So I wanted to move forward and give it a continuance to give that an opportunity to see if that could happen.
All right, so the initial proposal to continue is not in the interest of Councilman Hare or any other council member, so based on that, we will proceed as scheduled. That's what you're saying, right? Correct, sir? All right. Okay. All right, Mr.
Wait a minute, what did you say?
Were you looking to continue this item?
Yes, I was making a request
to hear
to
it tonight?
continue.
Continue as in table?
Right, to table the
Okay,
item,
all right.
yes.
All right.
And what I was trying to do was give the opportunity for the for and the
I got
against.
you.
Okay.
All right, I got you now. All right, so council has proposed by Councilman Hare to table the item, give the two parties an opportunity to discuss it at a later time. Is there a second? While we're going by lights, I see Councilmember Ingram. There's a motion by Councilmember Hare, seconded by Councilmember Ingram to table this item. Any discussion on the motion? Councilman Hare, can you put maybe some detail around when this is to come back to us? Time frame? You want to give it, 30 days? something like that?
Okay, I think that's more than enough time, Mayor, 30 days.
Just need some specifics to it, okay.
Yes.
All right.
To come back to us in 30 days.
Councilwoman Ingram, is that something that you will accept?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Council, any other discussion on the motion on the floor? The table for 30 days, and this item will come back. Councilman Dawkins, is that a vote or comment? All right, quick on the switch. All right, everybody join Councilman Dawkins. That's all right. Council Member Waddell and Davis?
Green.
All right. Madam Clerk, that's unanimous. That is green. All right, parties, we'll see you in 30 days. All right, council, have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, good night.